What if the biggest threat to your business isn't, a massive competitor with deep pockets,
Right.
or like a sudden macroeconomic downturn or a supply chain collapse? What if right this very second there is a literal terrorist lurking in the shadows of your own mind, and that terrorist is just the concept of
It
price?
sounds super dramatic, I know.
It does. But today we're doing a deep dive into source material that proves how just writing a number on a price tag triggers this psychological panic. A panic so deep that wildly successful business owners will voluntarily bankrupt themselves.
It's a deeply unsettling reality to confront, honestly, because, we spend an exorbitant amount of time and capital fortifying our businesses against external threats, right?
Oh, for sure. Legal teams, market trend analysis, all of that.
Exactly. We build these huge moats, all while remaining willfully blind to the internal sabotage happening every single time we assign a dollar value to what we do.
Yeah.
So the foundational concepts we're analyzing today, um, price, profit, power, and prosperity, they all hinge on one radical realization, and that is that fear dictates the numbers we put on our value.
And the mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle and re-examine every single ingrained belief you have about pricing.
Yes, every single one.
Because if you're operating a business, selling a service, or even just negotiating your own salary, you have these invisible ceilings built into your psychology.
We all do.
Right. So we're looking at how to shatter those ceilings and take absolute control of your financial destiny rather than just letting imaginary fears drive the bus.
And I think the crucial distinction to make right away is that we're not talking about tactical pricing tricks here.
Like putting a 9 at the end of the price instead of a 0?
Exactly. We aren't analyzing whether $97 converts better than 99 or the mechanics of a buy one, get one free offer. Those are just superficial tactics.
Right, the surface level stuff.
Yeah. The source material presents a fundamental psychological teardown of how human beings view the exchange of value. If you don't fix the underlying psychology of price first, every other sophisticated business strategy you try is essentially a mansion built on quicksand.
I really like how the authors use this incredibly vivid, almost visceral imagery to describe how this psychology actually plays out. They frame price as an irrational source of terror.
It really is.
It's not just a number on a spreadsheet, right? It's a trigger. It drives entrepreneurs to make decisions based on sheer panic rather than any real marketplace reality.
And that panic usually stems from the fear of being judged as too expensive.
Oh man, those two words. Too expensive.
Yeah, that specific phrase is the phantom that haunts almost every entrepreneur and salesperson. Because of this crippling fear of judgment, business owners routinely, systematically underprice their goods and services.
Yeah, so they just desperately want to be the safe option, right?
Exactly. They want to undercut the competition to ensure they never have to face a client saying no just because of the cost.
But the irony here is that they're obsessing over the short-term fear of losing a single customer today while being oddly blind to a much larger threat.
A far more devastating threat.
Yeah, losing their entire enterprise to bankruptcy. According to the data in the text, bankruptcy is a fate that almost always claims the lowest price providers eventually.
It's wild, but it's true. They literally starve themselves to death to avoid the temporary discomfort of a price objection.
It's the ultimate paradox. In trying to insulate themselves from the tiny pain of a prospect saying no, they guarantee the catastrophic pain of business failure down the road.
And to explain how this fear operates on, like, a neurological level, the source material brings in two classic fictional villains, which I think provides a fascinating framework.
I love this part.
Yeah, so the first is a pulp hero from the 1930s and 40s known as the Shadow.
This analogy is perfect for capturing self-sabotage. For those who aren't familiar with the old radio dramas, the Shadow was this mysterious vigilante crime fighter.
But his primary weapon wasn't his fists, right?
Exactly, no guns or anything. He struck such intense, paralyzing fear into evildoers that he rarely even had to physically fight them. Just his eerie, echoing laugh from a dark alley was enough to force hardened criminals to surrender.
They were just terrified that he might be there.
Right. They were so terrified of the possibility of him lurking in the dark that they became terrorized by all shadows. They were virtually driven insane by their own anticipation of fear.
The anticipation is the key variable there. The text argues that the concept of price functions exactly like the shadow in the minds of salespeople.
It strikes preemptive fear.
Preemptive fear, exactly, to such a degree that it compels them to reduce their prices without any real marketplace pressure ever being applied. There is no actual threat in the room.
The client hasn't even crossed their arms yet.
Right, the client is just sitting there. But the mere shadow of potential price resistance makes the seller cave and offer a discount.
It's that classic scenario where you're presenting a proposal, and before the client even opens their mouth to respond to the number, you just blurt out, well, we can probably do it for 10% less if you sign today.
Yes, you negotiate against yourself because the anticipation of the no is unbearable.
Which leads right into the second character the authors bring up, the Scarecrow from the Batman universe.
The Scarecrow is a brilliant metaphor here because of how he operates. Unlike other villains who have, super strength or whatever, the Scarecrow has no real physical power of his own.
Right, if you punch him, he just falls down.
Exactly. His entire arsenal relies on a weaponized hallucinogen. It's a magic fear dust that he sprays into people's eyes, and it instantly triggers their deepest, darkest nightmares.
It produces mass hypnosis. People see terrifying imaginary monsters, and they spiral into such horror that they'll do anything to escape the hallucination, even destroy their own city.
So the mechanism here is that price is the Scarecrow's fear dust. When a business owner arrives at that critical moment where they have to reveal their fee, the fear dust hits their system.
Think about the physical reaction. I've done this. Your voice suddenly drops an octave, or it starts to quiver, your palms sweat, you break eye contact.
Their whole body language just shrinks.
Yeah, you go sour. And you end up telegraphing to the prospect on a subconscious level, like, I am terrified of this number, which means I don't actually believe I'm worth this much.
And that physiological reaction from the seller is what actually kills the sale. It is rarely the price itself. The price is just a neutral number.
It has no inherent kinetic energy to destroy a business.
None. Its only power is the mass hypnosis it induces in your own mind. It makes you see these imaginary monsters like hordes of angry customers leaving bad reviews or your bank account draining.
And it causes you to preemptively slash your margins just to make the terrifying hallucinations stop.
Exactly.
But hold on, let's play devil's advocate for a second. That all sounds great in a sterile boardroom. It's a neat psychological theory. But what if I'm running a local hardware store and Walmart just bought the empty lot down the street?
Okay, a real physical threat.
Right. Or I run a B2B software company and a ruthless competitor with a $50 million war chest decides they want my specific market share. That's not me hallucinating scarecrow dust. That is an existential threat. How is that just psychological fear?
It is the most natural objection to this philosophy, and the authors tackle it head-on with a very specific historical case study in the text. They share the story of a thriving manufacturing company that was generating $100 million a year in revenue.
$100 million. Okay, so we're not talking about a fragile little mom and pop shop barely scraping by.
No, this is a robust, mature enterprise with serious infrastructure. But the owner of this company was suddenly faced with precisely the scenario you just described.
A giant competitor coming in.
A well-capitalized, highly aggressive competitor began making moves into his regional market. And this new competitor wasn't subtle. They were a bully.
Oh, boy.
They explicitly threatened to destroy this $100 million company by drastically undercutting them with predatory, below-cost pricing and massive advertising spend.
That really is the nightmare scenario. You have a giant explicitly stating their intention to burn your house down.
It is terrifying. And the owner of the established company was completely paralyzed by the fear of this impending war. He looked at their capital, he looked at their threats, and out of pure panic, he made a staggering strategic decision.
Don't tell me he just quit.
Worse. Instead of bracing for impact and fighting, he voluntarily surrendered. Before a single shot was fired, he handed over a significant share of his own profits and operational control to make this bullying competitor a partner.
Wow, he thought he was buying peace.
He firmly believed he was buying peace and protecting his legacy.
I can already see the train wreck coming. Let me guess, inviting the bully into the house didn't exactly bring peace.
It brought total destruction. The text refers to this new partner not as a competitor, but as a terrorist. Once they were inside the gates with access to the client lists and operations, they methodically destroyed the business from the inside out.
Because their goal wasn't just to compete.
Right. Their goal was never to compete head-on, because they knew they lacked the operational excellence to win a fair fight. Their goal was to get the dominant player to neutralize himself.
So he literally opened the gates for the Trojan horse, handed them the keys, and helped them unload the soldiers.
Precisely. And the profound tragedy of this story, and the author points this out, because he actually consulted and cautioned the owner against this move, is that the owner wasn't vanquished by the competitor's actual market superiority.
The competitor was just posturing?
Very aggressive posturing, but historically inept in their actual product delivery. The established company had the loyalty, the quality, the relationships. They could have fought back and likely won.
Or at worst, gone down swinging and kept their core customers.
Exactly. Instead, the owner was vanquished entirely by his own fear of the opponent's shadow.
He hallucinated the monster. The scarecrow dust convinced him the monster was invincible, and that hallucination caused him to burn his own house down.
It's a brutal lesson.
But if we swing the pendulum the other way, surely we can't just operate in total denial, right? We can't skip through the marketplace pretending competitors with massive budgets don't exist. Ignorance isn't a strategy.
No, it certainly isn't. And the text draws a hard line between fearlessness and foolishness. To illustrate this, they reference Harold Gene, the legendary former CEO who rescued ITT from the brink of ruin.
What was his philosophy?
He had this famous quote, "Only the paranoid survive." But the authors contextualize this. They call it prudent paranoia.
Prudent paranoia. I like the tension there. It reminds me of checking the ice before you go skating on a frozen pond.
That's a great way to look at it.
You shouldn't be paralyzed by terror, refusing to leave the shore, but you also shouldn't blindly sprint onto the ice without testing for thin spots. You have to respect the environment without letting it traumatize you.
That is a flawless analogy for what they're describing. You absolutely must possess an acute awareness that the ground beneath you might be thin ice. You have to be hyper-vigilant.
You can't just set prices based on pure arrogance.
Exactly. You can't ignore your customer's actual capacity to pay or macroeconomic factors. But, and this is the razor-thin distinction, you cannot let that necessary paranoia metastasize into a governing terror.
It can't dictate your daily operations.
Right. As the text summarizes, fortune favors the bold. It must be a calculated boldness backed by reason and value, but fundamentally, it must remain bold.
So the immediate actionable takeaway for a listener running a business is a mandatory pause. Before you instinctively lower a price to match a competitor's flyer or offer a discount because a prospect raised an eyebrow, you have to force yourself to pause and test the market.
Gather actual empirical data.
See if the marketplace pressure is real, or if you're just reacting to the scarecrow's fear dust. Do not surrender your margins in advance of an actual war.
And if we take that a step further and connect this internal psychology to the physical reality of running a business,
Right.
you have to confront what that fear is actually costing you.
Because it's not just costing you a few dollars on a spreadsheet.
No, it is costing you fundamental structural control over your enterprise. Which bridges us to the next massive concept the authors unpack.
Right, the visible structure built on top of this psychology. It's defined by a very specific equation in the text. Price creates profit, and profit creates power.
This is where the source material shifts from the abstract psychology into the hard, unforgiving mechanics of business strength. In standard business culture, we usually view profit simply as a reward.
Like a gold star for a good year.
Exactly. A little bonus the owner takes home if they're lucky and the stars align. But the text aggressively challenges that notion. Profit is much, much more than a passive reward. It is the ultimate active regulator of a business's strength and agility.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of that. It's easy to just say profit is power, but how does price actually touch every single nerve ending of an organization?
Well, every single choice you make about price sends a ripple effect through your entire operational ecosystem. First, your price dictates your market positioning.
Are you signaling that you're a luxury good or a bargain bin commodity?
Right. Second, it dictates the exact psychological profile of the customers you attract. Are you attracting demanding penny pinchers who complain about everything, or high-value clients who respect your expertise?
That is so true. The cheapest clients are always the loudest complainers.
Always. Third, price dictates the caliber of human capital you can acquire. Can you afford to hire top-tier talent that drives the business forward? Or are you stuck relying on high-churn employees who require constant micromanagement?
And finally, it profoundly affects your own personal pride and endurance in the work you do. Burnout is real when you aren't being paid what you're worth.
But above all of those massive structural elements, price is the sole mechanism that dictates profit. And profit is the tangible fuel that gives a business the power to act offensively rather than constantly cowering in defense.
To illustrate this, the source material uses a brilliant analogy. They compare the function of profit to a thermostat on a wall.
The thermostat analogy perfectly clarifies the mechanism of control.
Yeah, because a thermometer just passively tells you you're freezing to death. It measures the room and says, hey, it's 40 degrees in here, you're not making much money, good luck. It has no agency.
But a thermostat is an active commanding dial.
Exactly. You turn a thermostat up, and it physically engages the machinery to change the reality of your environment. You are dictating the climate, not just surviving it.
The thermostat forces the environment to bend to its setting. In the exact same way, the level of profit you proactively decide to generate regulates the amount of sheer power your business wields against external forces.
So mechanically speaking, does a higher price, which yields a higher profit margin, literally give you the physical armor to survive catastrophic events that would instantly vaporize a cheaper competitor?
It absolutely does, and this isn't theoretical.
Yeah.
Robust profit is the tangible liquid power that allows a business to survive severe adversity.
The text gives a highly practical example of this, right?
Yeah. Imagine you own a thriving retail store, and without warning, the city decides to tear up the main road right in front of your entrance for a massive 6-month sewer repair project.
That is a nightmare scenario for any brick-and-mortar business. The dust, the noise, foot traffic drops to near zero, but your landlord still expects rent on the first of the month, and your payroll still has to be met.
It's a death sentence for most. If you've been operating on razor-thin margins, trying to win by being the lowest price provider in town, you fundamentally lack the cash reserves to survive that 6-month siege.
You go bankrupt simply because your margins were too weak to absorb the shock.
But if you have spent the last 3 years commanding premium prices, running highly profitable margins, and banking those robust profits, you possess the power to weather the storm.
You can just afford to wait out the construction.
Or even better, you could afford to run a massive digital ad campaign to drive online sales while the physical store is inaccessible.
Or take a macroeconomic example, like a grueling 60-month economic recession where consumer spending just plummets. Profit is the heavy-duty shock absorber that keeps the vehicle from tearing itself apart.
And crucially, this power isn't just about battening down the hatches. It's about funding aggressive, positive, expansive actions when everyone else is retreating.
The offensive capability.
Yes. High profit funds the ability to aggressively acquire new customers when the cost of acquisition rises. It allows you to buy premium advertising real estate that your cheap competitors simply cannot fathom affording.
And it gives you the vast resources to deliver a flawless wow factor customer experience that guarantees repeat business.
Exactly. In a continuous closed loop, power enables profit. Profit funds power, and it all emanates from your initial pricing strategy.
That shifts the entire perspective from defense to offense. But we also need to dive into the specific concept of prosperity that the text mentions.
Right. They draw a hard line between mere business survival and true prosperity.
And they define it by what happens to the owner on a deeply personal level.
The authors are fiercely unapologetic about this. A business merely surviving is not the goal. The business is a vehicle meant to serve the owner.
So what is true prosperity in their eyes?
Prosperity is defined as the actual liquid money the owner can confidently pull out of the business day to day to live a completely debt-free lifestyle. It is the ability to accumulate outside assets, real estate, and investments to secure their family's future.
And ultimately, the ability to one day exit the business with a massive life-changing lump sum.
Exactly. So when you are chronically underpricing your services out of that scarecrow fear we talked about, you aren't just giving the customer a nice deal.
You are actively stealing future prosperity from yourself.
From yourself, your spouse, and your children, you are cannibalizing your own future to subsidize a stranger's purchase.
That is a harsh, unvarnished reality to confront. By underpricing, you are voluntarily choosing a life of financial fragility rather than choosing a life of pride and security.
So if raising the price, cranking up that thermostat is what actually buys you invincibility and prosperity, the unavoidable question is, why are we so terrified to touch the dial?
We operate as if there is a hard physical limit on what human beings will pay for our value. But the authors argue that limit is entirely imaginary.
And they use this phrase to shatter that belief, which is just brilliant. They say, the ocean doesn't care.
I can't stop thinking about that phrase that the ocean doesn't care. The core premise here is that the maximum possible selling price for your good or service is almost always exponentially higher than you currently believe it is.
Exponentially higher. We aren't talking about eking out a 5% increase to cover inflation. We're talking about multiples higher.
Because we build these suffocating invisible ceilings in our minds based on our very narrow industry experience.
We look around at what our 3 closest local competitors are charging, and we tell ourselves, well, the established industry standard is X, so I can only charge X plus or minus 5%.
Otherwise, the market will reject me.
We trap ourselves in an echo chamber of mediocrity. But the text argues that when entrepreneurs discard those limiting beliefs and look at pricing from completely outside their little bubble, they uncover explosive opportunities for profit.
And to illustrate the sheer scale of this psychological blindness, the authors provide a truly dramatic story involving a private client mastermind group. Set the stage for us.
So the author of the source material leads these elite mastermind groups where 20 successful entrepreneurs lock themselves in a room for 2 days to hash out complex problems.
Yeah, high levels.
Very high level. In one session, 2 business partners presented a brand new, highly specialized service they were planning to launch to their enterprise clients.
And what did they believe in their heart of hearts they could charge for this new service?
They had carefully crunched the numbers, analyzed their market, and they genuinely believed the absolute maximum price they could command without getting laughed out of the room was $8,000 to $10,000.
That was their mental ceiling set in concrete. Okay, 10 grand for a premium B2B service. That sounds like a substantial chunk of change.
It does.
So how do you go from a $10,000 ceiling to what happened next? You can't just scribble 100K on the whiteboard and expect rational corporations to wire you the money. What actually changed in that room?
Through intense coaching and peer pressure in that mastermind, they were pushed to completely deconstruct the value they were actually providing. The room challenged them. They said, if this service actually solves a massive multi-million-dollar inefficiency for your clients, why are you pricing it like a mid-level consulting package?
Because if you price it at $10,000, the client will subconsciously assume it can't possibly solve their million-dollar problem. It creates cognitive dissonance for the buyer.
Exactly. So they were challenged to change the framing, increase the speed of delivery, guarantee the implementation, and go out and test prices of $25,000, $50,000, and even $100,000 for this newly positioned service.
What was the ultimate result of that test? Did anyone actually pay it?
They ended up successfully selling the service repeatedly for $100,000 per client.
$100,000. 10 times what they thought was the absolute impenetrable maximum the market would bear.
It is a staggering multiple. By shattering that invisible ceiling in their minds and elevating the perceived gravity of their offer, they walked away with over $7 million more in bottom-line revenue than they had originally planned for.
$7 million of pure prosperity that they were just going to leave sitting on the table simply because they were afraid to ask for it.
It fundamentally proves that value is wildly subjective. And it brings up that famous quote attributed to Foster Hibbard. He said, "Go to the ocean with a teaspoon or a bucket. The ocean doesn't care."
It is perhaps the most profound metaphor in the entire text. The marketplace, the ocean of global commerce, is vast and infinitely abundant. Trillions of dollars flowing through it daily.
And it simply does not care if you approach the shoreline timidly, asking for a tiny teaspoon of profit to merely survive.
Nor does it care if you stride up boldly and demand to fill a massive bucket. The water is there.
The limitation has nothing to do with the ocean. The limitation is dictated entirely by the size of the container you consciously choose to bring to the shore.
The imagery is incredibly powerful. But we have to get back into the trenches here.
Let's do it.
That story sounds fantastic for a high-end mastermind group selling elite B2B consulting to flesh corporations. But what if you're not in that world?
What if you're a normal business?
Right. What if your business is competing against things that are literally undeniably free? How on earth do you bring a premium bucket to the ocean when everyone else on the beach is handing out free bottles of water?
It is the ultimate stress test for this philosophy. Because if it only works for luxury consulting, it's not a universal principle.
Exactly.
To answer that, the text delves into the deeply personal story of the co-author, Jason Mars, and his wife's business. And his experience proves that this isn't just ivory tower theory.
This is where it gets highly practical. Jason is the marketing director for his wife's business, which operates in the healthcare space, specifically a children's therapy practice handling speech pathology and special education.
And in their specific regional market, The competitive landscape is a nightmare. They don't just compete with cheaper private practices charging $50 an hour. They compete head-on with entirely free services.
Subsidized by the government.
Aggressively promoted and fully funded
Mm.
by state government agencies and the public school system. From the literal day a child is born, every authority figure a parent interacts with, pediatricians, nurses, counselors, is trained to funnel that child into these free state-run programs.
That sounds like an utterly impossible competitive environment. The law actually favors the free programs, and parents are culturally conditioned to believe they shouldn't have to pay a dime out of pocket for these therapies.
It's a massive hurdle.
So how do you possibly bring a bucket to that ocean? Most rational business owners would take one look at that landscape and either give up or try to charge the absolute bare minimum, maybe $40 an hour, just to scrape by on the overflow the state couldn't handle.
But Jason and his wife made a radical decision to ignore the industry norms entirely. They challenged their own limiting beliefs, and they decided to construct a massive bucket. They decided to command premium fees.
Let's talk about the mechanics of how they pulled that off. What are those fees, and how did they justify them against a price tag of $0?
While their private pay competitors in the region are stuck wallowing in these $75 to $150 an hour range, fighting for scraps, Jason's practice consistently commands $180 to $250 per hour.
Wow.
And what's more impressive, they successfully raised those prices repeatedly, right through a massive economic recession when everyone else was discounting.
Wait, they raised their prices to $250 an hour while the government is sitting right next door offering the exact same clinical service for $0. How? What psychological lever did they pull to make a parent willingly open their checkbook for that?
They succeeded because they became masters at helping the market understand that free is an illusion. Free always has a devastating hidden cost, especially in healthcare.
They mapped out exactly how the parent pays for the free government therapy.
Yes, they showed them. You pay by wasting precious developmental time, wading through months of bureaucratic red tape and waiting lists. You pay by having a state bureaucrat with a spreadsheet, rather than a doctor, dictate exactly how many minutes of therapy your child is allowed to receive.
Oh, that is powerful.
And you pay with a profound loss of privacy because the moment you take state money, your child's delays become part of a permanent centralized government record.
Ah, so they didn't just sell therapy. They exposed the excruciating real cost of free and positioned their price as the only way to escape those costs.
Precisely. And conversely, they violently highlighted the immense value of their premium bucket. They changed the entire framing of the transaction.
What did they tell the market?
They said, when you pay our premium fee, you are buying immediate speed. You get therapy tomorrow, not in 6 months. You're buying total, ironclad control over your child's medical records. You get to choose the exact right specialist for your child.
You are buying a dramatically higher level of undivided attention.
Exactly. They realized that a specific segment of the market, thoughtful, fiercely protective parents, values control, speed, and uncompromising quality exponentially more than they value getting something for free.
They completely bypassed the price comparison by changing what was actually being sold. They stopped competing on the commodity of an hour of therapy and started competing on the premium value of parental control and immediate intervention.
And that strategic reframing is exactly how they could consistently command top-tier prices, maintain a lucrative waiting list, and build robust prosperity, while their cheaper competitors were starving to death trying to compete with the government.
So, if you are listening to this and analyzing your own business, the vital exercise is to identify the teaspoon in your current pricing model.
Where are you asking for too little?
Right. Out of habit or out of the fear that your market only cares about price. Once you spot that teaspoon, you have to consciously design a bucket price. Create a premium, top-tier version of your service that feels genuinely uncomfortably high to you, a price that literally makes your palms sweat just typing it, and then confidently offer it.
You might be completely shocked to find that the ocean doesn't care, and a segment of your market has been waiting for someone to offer them that exact level of premium value.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most confrontational section of the chapter, overcoming the ultimate failure.
Yeah, this part is heavy.
Because once you see the undeniable success of that mastermind service and you see that premium therapy practice thriving wildly against free government competition, it forces you to confront an uncomfortable truth about your own potential.
It removes all the excuses. If you have the operational ability to charge more and the capacity to create more profit, and you intentionally choose not to do it, you aren't just making a passive mathematical mistake.
You are actively failing at the foundational purpose of your business.
The authors don't mince words here. They explicitly label this the ultimate failure. They define it as the failure to derive the maximum possible ethical profit from the value you provide to the marketplace.
And we have to ask the psychological question. Why do so many smart, hardworking business owners willingly commit this ultimate failure? If the bucket is right there, why do they keep picking up the teaspoon?
The authors point to a deeply ingrained, often subconscious sense of guilt about making money. They coin a fascinating term for it, having poor business esteem.
Business esteem. That is a brilliant concept.
It operates exactly like personal self-esteem, but it's entirely tied to your financial identity. Many entrepreneurs, despite their outward confidence, secretly harbor a deep-seated feeling that they simply don't deserve excessive wealth.
They feel an irrational guilt when asking for a high profit margin.
And because of this profound attitudinal problem, they leave massive, life-changing amounts of money on the table. The authors strongly argue that pricing is fundamentally a philosophical problem long before it ever becomes a mechanical one.
To really drive this point home, the authors use an incredibly aggressive analogy regarding a conscientious objector.
Yes, the foxhole analogy. They ask you to imagine being a soldier deployed in a muddy military foxhole in the middle of a brutal, chaotic firefight. You are literally fighting for your life against an enemy trying to overrun your position.
Okay, high stakes.
In that life or death scenario, would you ever want the guy watching your back, the guy holding the rifle next to you, to be a conscientious objector? Would you want someone who is deeply philosophically opposed to killing under any circumstances?
Obviously not. You would be terrified. You want someone in that foxhole who is utterly committed to doing whatever it takes, aggressively and without hesitation, to survive and win the battle.
Exactly. And the authors draw a direct parallel to commerce. They state that running a business in a competitive capitalist market is a battle. It is financial warfare.
And you absolutely do not want a conscientious objector to high prices and maximum profits running your business, especially if that person is you.
If you are philosophically opposed to extracting every possible dollar of profit from the value you create, you're going to get slaughtered in the marketplace by competitors who have no such qualms.
But wait, I have to jump in here because I know there is a massive ethical red flag going up in the minds of a lot of listeners right now. Isn't there a line where this philosophy just crosses over into pure toxic greed? Doesn't a business owner have some fundamental moral obligation to their community to exercise restraint, to offer a fair price, and not just aggressively squeeze every last dime out of their customers?
It is the most common and deeply felt objection to this entire line of thinking. Now, to be clear, the authors take a highly controversial Randian stance here.
Right, and just a quick note for the listener, we are impartially reporting the author's views here, not endorsing a specific political or economic ideology. We're just exploring the source material. So how do they defend this stance?
They completely and aggressively reject the idea of price restraint. Their argument is that we conflate two entirely different concepts. They define greed specifically as a toxic, selfish, unearned desire for things you did not create. But they argue there is a profound moral difference between that kind of selfishness and rational, productive self-interest.
Unpack that difference, because it's the crux of their entire moral defense of high prices.
To build this defense, they cite heavy philosophical frameworks from texts like Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged and Rabbi Daniel Lapin's Thou Shalt Prosper. The core argument goes like this. In any society, business owners are the ones who take the terrifying, unsubsidized financial risks.
They put their houses on the line to make payroll.
They conjure value and innovation out of thin air. They get bloodied in the arena every single day, organizing chaotic labor and capital into functional products. And crucially, they pay a grossly disproportionate share of the tax burden that funds the rest of society.
So they view the entrepreneur as Atlas, the mythological figure carrying the dead weight of the world on their shoulders.
Precisely. And because the entrepreneur bears the overwhelming majority of the physical, financial, and emotional risk, the authors argue that business owners have both a fundamental human right and a moral responsibility to themselves and their families to extract every single drop of prosperity from their business, not a drop less.
So the logic is, if the consumer is receiving a genuinely fair exchange of value, if the product solves their problem and they are happy with what they bought, there is absolutely zero merit in a business owner artificially capping their own profits out of some misplaced societal guilt.
The text goes so far as to explicitly state that you do not win a moral merit badge for self-imposed financial restraint. It's a completely useless, self-destructive act. If you cling to the toxic idea that asking to be paid handsomely for your genius is somehow morally wrong, you will continuously sabotage your own growth.
Because it operates as an unbreakable philosophical block. If you feel guilty about profit at your core, all the tactical pricing tricks in the world won't save you. You could hire the best consultants, learn exactly how to word a discount, but your internal limiters will always kick in and make you drop the price when you shouldn't.
The mechanical strategy will always inevitably fail if the internal philosophy driving it is fundamentally broken. You cannot out-tactic a bad belief system.
Which means the mandate for the listener is a ruthless internal audit. You have to audit your own deeply held philosophy about money, wealth, and value. You have to recognize that your prices are your conscious choice and your absolute responsibility.
Embracing a healthy, unapologetic self-interest isn't evil. It is the only way to build a resilient, powerful business that actually has the excess resources required to truly serve its customers at the highest possible level.
You can't help anyone if you're bankrupt.
Which brings us perfectly to the synthesis of this entire deep dive. If we tie all these core concepts together, the fear dust, the thermostat, the bucket, and the foxhole, it distills down to one incredibly clear, memorable insight.
What is that core insight?
Your price tag is never just a cold mathematical formula dictated by your industry's averages. It is a profound psychological mirror.
A psychological mirror, that is a brilliant way to frame it.
It reflects exactly who you are in the marketplace. Your price reflects your internal courage. It reflects your true understanding of your own value. And most importantly, it reflects your willingness to actively choose power and prosperity over the terrifying, hallucinatory scarecrow of fear.
Because when you finally conquer the fear of price, you aren't just tweaking your profit margins by a few percentage points. You are taking total, absolute control of your business's destiny.
It's about having the courage to look deeply into that mirror, realizing that you are the one holding the pen and deciding you aren't going to be terrorized by the shadows in your own mind anymore.
You're going to march down to the ocean, ignore the people with the teaspoons, and bring the biggest bucket you can carry.
Exactly the right mindset.
Now that we've established exactly why you need to completely shatter your pricing ceilings, ditch the guilt, and stop fearing the shadows, it brings up a very dangerous, very practical, modern phenomenon. How exactly do you survive and thrive in a marketplace where everyone else is offering things for a massive race-to-the-bottom discount, or worse, entirely for free, supported by venture capital? We'll tackle that nasty reality next time.
What if the most powerful word in business, the word free, is actually a cancer, destroying your profit margins and quietly ruining your customer satisfaction?
I mean, that sounds incredibly intense, maybe even a little hyperbolic.
Right, I know, but stick with me here. What if lowering your prices, giving people a so-called deal, often makes your product perform materially worse in the eyes of the consumer?
While raising your prices, like sometimes by an astronomical amount, can magically make people love what you do even more?
Exactly. I mean, it sounds completely backward. It defies everything we were taught in Econ 101 about the basic laws of supply and demand.
Right, you lower the price, demand goes up. You raise the price, demand goes down. It's this nice, neat mathematical equation.
But that equation completely shatters the second human psychology enters the room. So today, we're going to dismantle the traditional architecture of pricing.
We're looking at the hidden mechanics of value, the real psychology behind running a sale, offering a discount, and, well, the true cost of trying to compete with the absolute cheapest option in your market.
And this matters whether you're an entrepreneur scaling a massive company, a freelancer agonizing over how to quote your next project, or honestly just a curious mind trying to understand why you happily pay $6 for a cup of coffee but refuse to pay 99 cents for an app.
Yeah, because understanding this hidden psychology is the ultimate shortcut to taking control of your value. This isn't about little tricks like saying 50% off. It's about mastering the architecture of customer expectations.
So let's just dive right into the core concepts from the source material for this deep dive. Let's start with discounting, which is something we are all surrounded by.
Oh, constantly.
Right. We all love a good sale, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But there's a massive underlying danger to casually offering discounts. Why is a simple 20% off sale so potentially damaging to a brand?
Well, to understand that, you really have to look at what a discount actually does to a customer's attention.
Okay, how so?
When you sell something at full premium price, the conversation you are having with the buyer is about value. It's about the transformation your product provides, the status it brings, the problem it solves.
Right.
But the moment you reduce a price, especially without a really solid logical reason, you violently shift the customer's focus away from the value and place it entirely on the cost.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, you're actively training them to evaluate you based on a number on a tag rather than the benefit in their life.
You're basically turning yourself into a commodity.
Exactly. You were saying the most interesting thing about this product today is that it's cheaper than it was yesterday, and doing that severely damages your price integrity.
That makes total sense.
Because if you want to maintain premium pricing, you have to be an expert at selling value. Discounts erode that ability almost instantly because they train the consumer to just, wait for the drop. They learn the game.
I mean, I see this all the time with certain retail clothing brands. You walk into the mall, and it's almost a running joke. The sign says 60% off entire store, but it says that every single weekend.
Right. It's always on sale.
Exactly. At that point, the 60% off price isn't a discount. It's just the actual price, and the quote-unquote original price is a total fiction.
Exactly.
Like if I ever bought a sweater there on a Tuesday for full price, I'd feel like an absolute idiot.
Because you would be. They've conditioned you. They've built an environment where the perceived value of the sweater is permanently anchored to the discounted price.
Yeah.
But the psychological damage goes so much deeper than just training people to wait for a sale. There is a deeply biological component to how price affects our actual physical experience of a product.
This is exactly what I want to get into.
Yeah.
There is this incredible study from the source material conducted by researchers at Caltech, the California Institute of Technology, that completely blew my mind.
Oh, the wine study. The setup for this is just brilliant.
It really is. So they took 20 people, put them into fMRI brain scanners, and had them taste wine.
Right, while they're literally inside the machine.
Exactly. You have these participants lying in this massive, noisy, magnetic tube. And the researchers had these little tubes feeding small amounts of wine into their mouths.
Which is already a wild way to do a wine tasting.
Right. And they tell the participants, you're going to taste 5 different Cabernet Sauvignons. And we're going to show you the price of each bottle on a screen before you taste it. They show them prices ranging from $5 up to $90.
But the catch is there weren't 5 different wines.
No, there were only 3. They were secretly giving them the exact same wine multiple times, just changing the price tag on the screen.
So sneaky.
Yeah, they took a cheap $5 bottle of wine and presented it once with the true $5 label, and then later presented the exact same liquid as a $45 wine.
And they did the reverse with an expensive bottle too, right?
Yep. Presenting a $90 wine, once at $90 and once at $10.
And, I mean, if human beings were perfectly rational, objective, calculating machines, they would rate the $5 wine identically both times.
Exactly. Because the chemical composition of the liquid hitting their taste receptors hasn't changed by a single molecule.
Right. If you asked an economist, they'd say the utility of the wine is constant. But the results were mind-blowing.
The brain scans literally registered more physical pleasure in the medial orbitofrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that processes pleasant experiences. When the participants tasted the wine they believed was more expensive.
And it wasn't just a social conformity effect. That's what gets me.
No, that's the craziest part. It wasn't just them self-reporting, oh yes, this $45 wine has delightful notes of oak and blackberry, just to sound sophisticated to the researchers.
Right, they weren't just showing off.
Exactly. Their brains biologically, measurably experienced more joy. The neurons fired harder. The pleasure was real, even though the wine was the exact same cheap stuff they had just drank a few minutes prior.
It's incredible.
It's exactly like how a placebo works in medicine. You take a sugar pill, and because you fiercely expect it to cure your headache, your brain releases actual neurochemicals that block the pain. But here, the placebo is being applied to our wallets.
Yeah, the price tag itself is the active ingredient creating the pleasure.
The price tag is the active ingredient. That is a profound way to put it.
Well, the expectation of quality actually molds the sensory assessment of the experience. The brain says, this costs $90, therefore it must be exceptional, and it essentially commands the taste buds to find the exceptional qualities.
Wow.
And this phenomenon isn't isolated to a fancy wine tasting. The text points out that double-blind studies with prescription drugs, over-the-counter pain relievers, energy drinks, and cosmetics show the exact same mechanism.
So when you discount a product, it literally does not perform as well as it did at full price?
Exactly, because you have lowered the buyer's expectation. Think about what that means for a business.
Right. If you lower your price to try and make a customer happy by giving them a deal, you might actually be chemically guaranteeing that they enjoy your product less.
You are actively sabotaging their experience.
Right.
If you sell a high-end coaching program or a premium piece of software or a luxury physical good, part of the value you are delivering is the psychological weight of the investment.
I see.
When someone pays a premium, they are highly motivated to extract value from it. They pay closer attention, they implement the advice, they savor the experience. But when you slash the price, you remove that psychological weight.
Okay, I have to push back here, or at least play devil's advocate for a second. Because the psychology is fascinating, but we live in the real world.
Fair enough.
Discounts work. They drive traffic. If a local furniture store is struggling to make payroll and they run a huge 70% off clearance event, there will be a line around the block. They will generate cash and move inventory. How can we say discounting is a failure if it solves an immediate cash flow crisis?
It's a really fair point, and it's the exact trap so many businesses fall into. Yes, a massive discount will drive traffic. It acts like a shot of adrenaline to your cash flow.
Right.
But you have to ask a critical second question. What kind of traffic is it driving? And what is the long-term cost of serving that specific type of customer?
What do you mean? I mean, a dollar is a dollar.
A dollar is a dollar, but a customer is not just a customer. The source material highlights this highly revealing study conducted by a group of resort properties.
Oh, the Common Code study.
Yeah. They wanted to understand customer satisfaction, so they meticulously analyzed thousands of their guest comment cards. But instead of just reading the reviews, they cross-referenced the feedback against what the guests actually paid for their rooms.
And hotel pricing is incredibly dynamic.
Exactly. On any given night, the person in room 301 might have paid $500, while the person across the hall in 302 snagged a last-minute deal on a discount travel site for $150.
I can almost guess where this is going based on the wine study.
It's the paradox of price in action. The guests who paid the deeply discounted rates, the ones who knew they were getting a massive steal, who were paying pennies on the dollar for a luxury resort experience, they were the ones who left the most critical, nitpicky, overwhelmingly negative feedback.
No way.
Yeah. They complained about the fluffiness of the towels, the speed of the room service, a speck of dust on the mirror. Meanwhile, the guests who paid full rack rate, top dollar for the exact same rooms and the exact same service left glowing 5-star reviews.
That is so counterintuitive. You would think the person who got the cheap room would be thrilled. They'd think, hey, the towel's a little scratchy, but I only paid $150, so who cares? This is great.
Right.
And you'd assume the person paying $500 would be a tyrant, demanding absolute perfection because they spent so much money.
It makes logical sense, sure, but it ignores the psychological profile of the buyer. Discounting draws a very specific demographic, the hyper-price-sensitive consumer.
The bargain hunters.
Exactly. This is a customer who is fundamentally skeptical. They are constantly looking for the catch. Their primary focus is on cost, not value. So they walk into the resort with a magnifying glass, hunting for flaws to validate their inherent belief that businesses are trying to rip them off.
Wow. And conversely, the premium buyer.
The premium buyer operates on a totally different frequency. They made a high investment decision. Psychologically, they want to validate their own smart choice. They want to believe they're staying in a fabulous place because they paid a fabulous price.
So their brain, just like in the MRI scanner, highlights the positive aspects of the experience to justify the expenditure.
Exactly. So by offering a steep discount, you aren't just lowering your profit margin, you are actively recruiting the most difficult, complaining, high-maintenance customers in the market.
And simultaneously ensuring they won't even enjoy the product once they get it.
Precisely. You're renting a crowd, not building a clientele.
Okay, so what is the takeaway for a listener who occasionally needs to run a sale? Maybe they have physical inventory that is going out of season, or they have a service business with a slow month and they just need to bridge the gap. Are discounts permanently forbidden?
No, not forbidden, but they must be wielded like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. The biggest rule is Never discount predictably.
Like the clothing store we talked about.
Right. If your clients learn that you run a half-price summer blowout every single July, you will have zero sales in May and June. You've taught them that your normal price is a lie.
So how do you use them safely?
You only use them to drive highly specific, beneficial behaviors that help your business. You discount for volume, buy 3, get 1 free, because that moves bulk inventory.
Right.
You discount for off-season purchasing to smooth out your cash flow during dry spells. You discount for paying upfront in cash because that eliminates your collection risk. But at all costs, you protect the prestige of your core offering.
Which perfectly bridges the gap to a massive dilemma. Let's say you're a consultant, or a graphic designer, or a B2B software sales rep. You're sitting across from a prospect. The meeting is going great, they love the proposal, but then they cross their arms and say, the price is just a little too high. If you can knock 15% off, I'll sign the contract right now.
Oh, that's a tough spot.
If casually discounting destroys value, how do you navigate that moment without losing the deal or ruining your perceived worth?
You deploy the rule of quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo.
Yes. It's a Latin phrase meaning something for something. It is the absolute golden rule of negotiation and pricing defense. If you absolutely must lower a price, you must demand a concession of equal or greater psychological value from the buyer to logically justify that drop in price.
You kind of make them bleed a little bit.
In a manner of speaking, yeah. You create friction. Because if a client asks for 15% off and you immediately say, okay, sure, we can do that, what did you just tell them?
You told them you were trying to overcharge them by 15% 5 minutes ago?
Exactly. You communicated that your initial price was completely arbitrary. You lose their respect instantly.
Wow, yeah.
But if they ask for 15% off and you say, I can't reduce the price of the core package, however, if you are willing to remove the monthly reporting calls and you agree to pay the entire annual fee upfront today instead of net 30, I can authorize a 15% reduction.
Oh, that completely changes the dynamic.
It changes everything. You haven't lowered your value. You've changed the scope of the deal. You preserved your price integrity because the discount makes logical sense.
There is an amazing real-world example of this in action from the text with an optical store chain. They wanted to run a massive summer promotion. The deal they came up with was incredibly generous. Like if you come in and buy a regular pair of prescription glasses, they would give you a free pair of prescription sunglasses, plus a family 4-pass to a local water park.
It's an overwhelming offer, almost too good.
Right, and the marketing team was actually worried about that. They thought, people are going to look at this and think it's a scam. So they decided to run a split test across 2 different geographic markets to see how consumer psychology reacted. In the first market, they just ran the offer as a pure, frictionless giveaway. The radio ads just said, come in, buy glasses, get free sunglasses and water park tickets.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. But in the second market, they ran the exact same offer with one crucial difference. To get the free sunglasses and the water park tickets, the customer had to physically bring in a $10 cash donation or 2 canned food items for the local community food bank.
They introduced a hurdle. They demanded a quid pro quo.
Yes. And the results are fascinating. The market that required the charitable donation, the one that forced the customer to actually go to their pantry, find 2 cans of soup, put them in their car, and carry them into the store, performed drastically better than the market where the bonuses were just handed out for free.
Which seems entirely irrational, right? Why would making a promotion harder to claim result in more people claiming it?
I have a theory on this, and it maps perfectly to dating dynamics. Have you ever had a friend who starts dating someone, and this new person is just instantly, desperately available?
Oh, absolutely.
They agree with everything your friend says. They drop all their plans to hang out. They text back within 3 seconds every time. What happens?
Your friend gets suspicious. They lose interest.
Exactly. The subconscious alarm bells start ringing. You start wondering, what is wrong with this person? Why are they so desperate? Do they have no other options?
Right.
Their perceived value plummets. But if you meet someone and they have boundaries, they have their own life, they make you work for their attention a little bit, their perceived value instantly goes up, you respect them more because they respect themselves.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And it is the exact same psychological hardware we use to navigate the marketplace. We have been conditioned by decades of scammy advertising. We're hardwired with the warning, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. When a store just slashes a price by 50% for no reason, or offers a massive bonus just for walking through the door, the intelligent consumer smells a rat. They wonder, are the glasses defective? Are they jacking up the base price to cover the free stuff?
But the moment you require a concession, like the canned food donation, the offer suddenly snaps into logical focus.
Yes. It satisfies the skeptical, analytical part of the brain. The consumer thinks, they are doing a charity drive. This is a special event to help the food bank. That's why they are being so generous. The friction actually validates the offer.
So for anyone listening, whether you're a freelancer, or a contractor, or a sauce founder, the practical application here is to never discount out of pure fear or competitive pressure or because a prospect is bullying you.
Never.
If you want to drop a price to win a deal, always anchor it to a logical concession that benefits you. Make them earn the price drop. Ask for early registration. Ask for 3 qualified introductions to other businesses. Ask for a longer contract term. It keeps you in the position of power and proves that your value is real.
Control the context. And what's truly powerful is that if you can use context and logic to justify a discount, you can use those exact same psychological levers to justify a massive premium price point.
Which brings us to a total paradigm shift in how we think about pricing. Moving away from discounts and looking at how to command top dollar by framing price as selling money at a discount.
This is where we separate the amateurs from the masters in pricing strategy. Most people and most businesses are completely trapped in a model called cost-plus pricing. It's a hangover from the Industrial Revolution.
How so?
Well, in a factory setting, pricing is simple. You figure out what your raw materials cost. The steel, the plastic, you add the hourly cost of the labor required to assemble it, you add your overhead for the building.
Right.
Then you slap a 15% or 20% profit margin on top, and boom, you have your price. It's entirely focused on the cost of inputs. And that works fine if you're selling widgets. But in the modern economy, especially if you are selling knowledge, services, consulting, or software, cost-plus pricing is a death sentence for your margins.
Because your inputs are invisible. It's just your brain and a laptop.
Exactly. The strategy we need to look at requires shifting the entire conversation away from the cost of labor and focusing entirely on the return on investment. You have to detach your price from your time.
There's a personal example from the author of one of our source materials that actually made my jaw drop when I read it.
Oh, the copywriting project.
Yes, he talks about quoting a project for a client, a copywriting job, and his fee was $188,000 for a 10-day project.
It's staggering.
Think about that. $188,000 for roughly 2 weeks of sitting at a desk, typing words into a document. When I first read that, my immediate reaction was, that is absolutely outrageous. It's borderline extortion. How could any rational business owner ever justify paying that?
And your reaction is completely normal because your brain was immediately anchored to the concept of time and labor. If you view that transaction as a business paying for 10 days of typing, yes, it's an absurd fee. They could hire a full-time, highly skilled in-house writer for an entire year with benefits for less than that. But that is not what is actually being sold.
Let's break down the math on this.
Let's do it. The author isn't selling 10 days of labor. He is selling a financial asset. Let's say the sales copy he writes for this client is for a major product launch. And let's conservatively estimate that this new, highly persuasive copy increases their conversion rate and generates an additional $500,000 in net profit every single year for the next 5 years.
Okay, so that is $2.5 million in total new revenue generated directly because of the words he wrote.
Exactly. When you frame it through that lens, the client is not paying $188,000 for a few days of work. They don't care if it took him 10 days or 10 minutes. They're paying $188,000 to acquire $2.5 million.
Which is, what, a 1,400% return on investment?
The client is literally buying money at a massive discount. They are trading a small pile of money for a much larger pile of money. When you frame your price against the ultimate financial outcome of your service, a 6-figure fee suddenly looks like the bargain of the century.
Buying money at a massive discount. That is such a powerful reframe.
It changes the whole conversation.
There is a great visual demonstration of this concept that the text says sometimes happens at high-end business seminars. A speaker will be on stage talking about pricing, and he'll pull a $100 bill out of his pocket and start auctioning it off to the audience.
Right, people start bidding $1, $5, $20.
It's a fun little game. But then the speaker stops the auction. He clicks a button, and on the massive screen behind him, a picture appears of a sleek metal briefcase, opened up, absolutely stuffed with stacks of $100 bills, $100,000 in cash.
I love this part.
And the speaker looks at the audience and asks, Who here would pay me $1,000 right now for this briefcase?
And every single hand in the room shoots up.
Every single one. People would be sprinting to the stage with their credit cards
Yep.
because the speaker has completely bypassed the part of the brain that says $1,000 is a lot of money to spend on a seminar.
Exactly.
He shifts the brain from that's a huge expense to that is an impossible steal. It's $1,000 to buy $100,000.
The focus is entirely removed from the price tag of the speaker's coaching program or mastermind, and entirely fixated on the ultimate financial gain that program claims to deliver.
So if I'm listening to this and I run a B2B marketing agency, I shouldn't be pitching a $5,000 website redesign based on how many hours of coding it takes.
No, absolutely not, because then the client is just going to compare your hourly rate to a cheaper developer overseas.
Right. Instead, you need to calculate the outcome. You say, look, your current website is leaking leads. Based on our analysis, a conversion-optimized redesign will generate an additional $100,000 in qualified pipeline this year. We will build you a 24/7 digital salesperson that never sleeps, never asks for a raise, and brings in 6 figures of pipeline. And the one-time acquisition cost for that asset is just $5,000.
Precisely. You aren't selling a website. You are selling a $100,000 outcome for a $5,000 fee. You control the context, you control the anchor, and suddenly your price isn't an obstacle, it's the vehicle for their success.
Okay, this has been an incredible deep dive into the high end of the pricing spectrum. We've talked about premium positioning, ROI, and defending your margins. But now we really need to completely pivot.
Let's do it.
We need to look at the exact opposite end of the spectrum, the abyss, zero.
The most radioactive price point in existence.
We touched briefly on how discounting drives the wrong kind of traffic, but the source material we're drawing from really goes to all-out war with the word free. Why is zero so fundamentally different from, say, charging 1 penny?
Because zero isn't just another price. It is an emotional hot button. Dan Ariely, a behavioral economist, has done extensive research on this. When something is free, we forget the downside. Zero removes all friction of decision-making.
It's true.
Yes, it is incredibly powerful. Yes, if you offer something for free, you will generate a stampede of traffic faster than any other marketing tactic on earth. But it comes with a lethal side effect. It creates a highly toxic expectation and an intense entitlement mentality among consumers.
It's the old cliche, but it's true. People do not value what they do not pay for.
Exactly. When you give something away for free, you are actively training your buyer to downgrade from a rational customer to an entitled mooch. You aren't building an audience, you are feeding a flock of seagulls. And the moment you start throwing bread, they turn on you.
The text gives a fantastic, tragic example of this with the news media. Think about newspapers over the last 2 decades. When the internet came along, the marginal cost of distributing a newspaper dropped to zero. You didn't have to pay for ink or paper or delivery trucks. So logically, newspapers started putting all their journalism online for free to capture eyeballs and sell banner ads.
They confused the cost of the physical paper with the actual value of the journalism.
And it was a fatal error. They trained an entire generation of consumers that high-quality investigative journalism was a free commodity. And now, decades later, when the banner ad model collapsed and these publications are desperately trying to put up paywalls to survive, consumers are furious.
Oh, they feel robbed.
They refuse to pull out their credit cards for a digital subscription because they've been anchored to zero. The trust and the perceived value of the information were completely annihilated by the price tag of free.
We see the exact same destructive cycle happening in the digital marketing and creator space. There are countless examples of online experts or coaches who used to sell premium flagship courses, let's say a highly detailed business building course for $3,000. It was their prestige offering.
A serious investment.
Right. But then the market gets a little competitive. They read a blog post about funnel hacking or rapid list building, and they decide, I'm going to take this exact same $3,000 course and give it away for free as a lead magnet to build my email list.
Which, if you don't understand the psychology of price, feels like a genius move. You're providing massive value up front.
In the short term, yes, their email list explodes. But think about the catastrophic psychological damage they've just inflicted on their brand.
Yeah.
First, the people who actually paid $3,000 for that course last year are incredibly alienated. They feel like suckers. You have permanently destroyed trust with your best, highest-paying customers.
That's a huge point.
Second, the thousands of people who grabbed it for free won't actually value it. They'll download it to their hard drive, let it gather digital dust, and never implement it because they have no financial skin in the game.
And most importantly, if you ever try to launch a new $3,000 course to that massive new list of freebie seekers, they'll laugh at you.
Yeah.
You've taught them that your knowledge is worth zero.
You've permanently destroyed your brand prestige. You traded long-term equity for a short-term dopamine hit of vanity metrics.
Now, what's really fascinating is how the authors pull this psychology out of the business world and look at how it bleeds into society at large. Because this entitlement mentality isn't just about refusing to pay for a newsletter. It scales up in some pretty extreme ways.
The behavioral loop is the exact same, whether you're talking about a digital download or a physical service.
Right. The authors point to historical incidents to highlight this. They talk about riots breaking out in the 1970s because crowds felt entitled to free music concerts.
Wow.
They cite wild stories, like a bus driver in New York being assaulted by teenagers simply because they demanded a free ride and he said no.
Hmm.
Or a local police officer who demanded free coffee from a convenience store every single night, feeling totally justified until he was finally fired for it.
The core argument being made is that free removes the natural friction of value exchange. It creates a psychological loop where the recipient begins to view the free item not as a gift, but as a fundamental right.
And the authors actually use this as a lens to look at broader cultural movements. They point to government benefit expansions, referencing periods like the Obama administration in the U.S., or massive protests in countries like Greece and Spain when governments attempted to cut back on free benefits.
Right, which is obviously a very sensitive topic.
Exactly. And just to be completely clear to the listener, obviously political policy is incredibly complex, and our goal here is absolutely not to debate the merits of social safety nets or take a political stance. We're just impartially reporting the author's perspective as a cultural observation found in the text.
Yep, just conveying the original source material's argument about the psychology of entitlement.
Right. But the underlying behavioral observation the authors are making is quite striking. When you provide something for free on a massive scale, whether it's a pizza promotion or a societal benefit, it inherently shifts the psychological baseline. It creates a profound expectation that is almost impossible to walk back without massive friction.
It's the psychology of habituation. We quickly adapt to our environment. If the environment provides something for free, our brain categorizes it as a baseline norm. To suddenly charge for it feels like a penalty, a loss. And human beings are incredibly loss-averse.
So wrapping this up into a practical takeaway for the listener, never, ever give away your prestige offering for free. Do not devalue the core thing that makes your business special.
But there is a caveat. You can use free strategically as long as it's the right kind of free.
Yes, the concept of edu marketing.
Exactly. Think of the cheese sample at the grocery store. They don't give you a free block of cheese. They give you a sliver on a toothpick.
Right.
In the knowledge economy, you can use edu marketing to give away basic information, a diagnostic tool, a buyer's guide, or a framework. You give away the information that educates the buyer on why they have a problem and why they need your premium service to solve it.
You can give away the what and the why for free, but you always fiercely protect the actual execution, the customized consulting, the prestige product.
Exactly. The free content is the bridge. The paid product is the destination.
Okay, that makes total sense if you are the one in control of your pricing.
Yeah.
But this brings up a massive, terrifying, real-world dilemma for a lot of businesses. It's all well and good to sit here and say, I'm going to hold my ground, I'm not going to discount, I'm not going to give my stuff away.
Right.
But what if your competitor is offering their service for free? What if you are a software company and a massive tech giant just released a free clone of your tool? How on earth do you compete with zero? It feels like an impossible battle.
It feels impossible until you understand the million-dollar secret of pricing in a competitive market. Every single free offering has a concealed cost.
Okay, unpack that.
Nothing is actually free. It is always paid for in time, in frustration, in loss of privacy, in lack of quality, or in hidden fees down the line. If you can help your prospective customer clearly see the hidden price of the cheap or free option, you can easily command a premium.
The source material gives a perfect case study of this. It's from the author's own healthcare business. His wife runs a private practice providing speech and occupational therapy for children. Now, in their area, the government actually provides this exact same type of therapy for free through the public school system.
So they are literally competing against a price tag of $0, provided by a massive institution.
Exactly. And yet, their private practice successfully charges $250 an hour, and they have a massive waiting list. How is that possible?
By shining a massive, uncomfortable spotlight on the concealed costs of the government's free therapy.
Right. They don't just say, we are better.
Yeah.
They break down exactly what the parents are actually paying when they choose the free option.
Yeah.
If you take the free government therapy, you pay by wasting precious time navigating rivers of bureaucratic red tape and filling out endless forms. You pay by having a random, overloaded government employee assign an entry-level therapist to your child, giving you zero choice or agency in the matter.
And worst of all, in this specific example, you pay by losing control over your child's permanent medical and educational record, because now the government is tracking their developmental delays in a public system.
Exactly. When you illuminate those hidden costs, the wasted time, the total loss of control, the uncertain quality, the loss of privacy, suddenly paying $250 an hour out of pocket doesn't seem expensive at all.
Not at all.
It seems like a bargain to guarantee top-tier quality, handpick your therapist, and maintain total control and privacy over your own child's health care.
You shift the comparison. You aren't comparing $250 against zero. You are comparing $250 against a nightmare of stress and uncertainty.
I try to visualize this with travel. Think about picking a flight from New York to London. You have two options. Option A is a completely free flight you booked using accumulated credit card points.
Sounds great so far.
Right, but it requires a 10-hour layover in a terrible airport with no lounges. You are in a middle seat right next to the bathroom. You have zero baggage allowance, and there's a 40% chance the flight gets delayed.
Okay, so the price tag is zero, but the physical and emotional cost is immense.
Exactly. Option B is paying $500 for a direct, nonstop flight. You get an aisle seat, you leave exactly at 9:00 a.m., and you arrive refreshed. For a huge percentage of the market, the true price of that free flight is just way too high.
Yeah, the biological toll, the time loss, the sheer misery of the experience makes the free option completely unacceptable.
That is a perfect analogy. The cost of free is often too high. And this is the crucial realization for business owners. There's a significant segment of the market that always prefers to pay for certainty, speed, privacy, and a premium experience.
Always. Your job is not to win over the hardcore bargain hunters who will gladly suffer through a 10-hour layover on a middle seat just to save a buck. You will never win them, and frankly, you shouldn't try.
Because if you do win them, they'll just complain about the scratchy towels at the resort.
Exactly. Your job is to market to the people who value their time, their comfort, and their peace of mind. You must explicitly show them why your paid option is the only logical antidote to the deep hidden pain of the free option.
So for you, the listener, your action item for today is to sit down with a piece of paper and literally map out every single hit or cost, frustration, annoyance, and risk associated with your cheapest competitors. Write them all down.
Yep.
What is the emotional toll of using them? What is the time delay? And then confidently market your premium price as the guaranteed cure for those exact pains.
If we synthesize everything we've talked about today, from the MRI wine scans to the optical store food drive to competing with free government therapy, the overarching insight is this. Price is not just a math equation on a spreadsheet. It is the psychological architecture of your business.
I love that phrase, psychological architecture. Because the price you set physically alters reality. It determines the quality of the customer you attract, the level of respect they give you in a negotiation, and ultimately, as we saw with the wine study, the literal biological pleasure they experience when consuming your product.
You control the context and you control the market's perception. Refuse to be commoditized. Demand a quid pro quo when you negotiate. Anchor your value to the ROI, not your time.
Absolutely.
And always remember that the people who complain the loudest about your price are almost never the customers you actually want to serve. Stop fearing price and start wielding it as a tool.
That is such a powerful, empowering place to land. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of value and expectation. Now that you know how to wield discount safely and how to fiercely defend against the gravity of free, you are left with one massive lingering question.
Oh, and what's that?
Well, what happens when you completely sever the link between the actual physical utility of the product you are selling and the price tag attached to it? I want you to think about why a plain white cotton t-shirt, which costs maybe $2 in materials to manufacture in a factory, easily sells for $400 or more, just because it has a specific luxury designer logo stitched into the collar.
The designer markup.
Exactly. How does that math work in the human brain? Why do we eagerly line up to pay a 20,000% markup for a piece of cotton? We are going to explore exactly how to break that price-product link in our next deep dive. Until then, stay curious.
Have you ever been sitting across a table or, maybe staring at a Zoom screen and you feel that sudden, undeniable drop in your stomach?
Oh yeah, that is a universally uncomfortable feeling.
Right. You know the exact moment I'm talking about. You just presented your proposal, you outlined the whole strategy, you delivered what you thought was just a flawless pitch, and you stated your price.
And then comes the pause.
Yes, that agonizing 2-second pause. The prospect leans back, maybe tilts their head, and asks, is there any flexibility on that number?
Right, right.
And in that split second, the tension in the room just spikes. You really want the deal. You probably need the revenue, honestly. But there's this nagging voice in your head warning you that if you just, shave off 10% to make them happy, you are giving away your hard-earned profit for literally nothing.
Yeah, it triggers a very specific kind of professional anxiety. It's the friction point between that immediate desire to just close a transaction and the long-term need to actually protect your margins.
Yeah.
And in most of those situations, the seller's fear of losing the prospect completely overwhelms their commitment to their own pricing. I mean, that fear is what drives the impulse to just immediately concede.
Right. But conceding in that specific moment, just dropping the price simply because they asked, is what we're calling a naked discount.
Yeah, a naked discount.
And the core tension we're exploring today is this idea that a naked discount is essentially the ultimate business sin. I mean, it's a concession without a condition. And when you do that, you aren't just taking a hit on your profit margin, you're actually doing something far more damaging to the psychology of the relationship.
You're implicitly confessing that your original price was inflated. I mean, think about the signal it sends to the buyer.
It's basically a red flag.
Totally.
Right.
If you quote them $10,000, they push back, and you immediately say, okay, I could do $8,000. Well, you've just confirmed that the product or service was never really worth $10,000 in the first place.
Right, like you were just trying to pull a fast one.
Exactly. You were essentially trying to see what you could get away with, and they caught you.
You're teaching them that your boundaries are just an illusion.
Precisely. You completely shatter the price integrity of your offering. I mean, from that day forward, that client will never accept your first quote again.
Because why would they?
Right. You've proven that your initial numbers are merely a starting point for their downward negotiation.
Right.
You've basically altered the DNA of the relationship, and you're putting yourself in a permanently defensive posture.
This is exactly why, in this deep dive, we're dissecting a very specific strategy from our source material on extreme pricing mechanics. We are diving into Chapter 3 of the book we've been looking at.
Right, the section on pricing strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Titled, If and When You Discount, Get Quid Pro Quo.
Quid pro quo being, the Latin principle of something for something.
Mm-hmm.
It's the absolute foundation of an equitable exchange.
Right.
And the thesis here isn't that discounting is universally forbidden. I mean, that's not realistic.
No, not at all.
The thesis is that a price reduction must be a deliberate trade. If the buyer wants a concession on price, well, the seller must extract a concession of equal or greater operational or marketing value.
Which means transforming a moment of surrender into a moment of strategic negotiation.
Exactly.
So you're about to learn the psychological frameworks and really the operational tactics to turn price resistance into an advantage. Whether you are selling high-ticket B2B consulting or consumer retail, mastering this conditional discounting approach is, well, it's how you protect your margins.
And maintain the respect of your buyers.
Exactly. And stop leaving money on the table just because a prospect raised an eyebrow.
It requires a really fundamental shift in how you view a transaction. You kind of have to stop looking at your price as a rigid wall that either holds or collapses.
Right.
And start looking at it as a lever. You can pull the lever, sure, but only if the mechanism is attached to something else that directly benefits your business.
Let's start with the baseline scenario, because I think the most common reason businesses discount isn't necessarily because of a tense negotiation, right?
Right.
It's simply to drive urgency, like the classic promotional sale. Buy now and save 20%. But our source material argues that this standard approach is just fundamentally flawed because it lacks what they call the ring of truth.
Yeah, the ring of truth. I mean, if we look at the typical promotional environment, it is just saturated with arbitrary numbers.
Totally.
A retailer offers like 30% off for a long weekend. A software company offers 2 months free if you sign up today. The consumer is constantly bombarded with these reductions, but there's rarely any underlying logic presented for why the discount even exists.
It's just a number pulled out of thin air to get attention.
And the modern consumer is highly, highly cynical regarding arbitrary numbers. I mean,
Uh-oh.
subconsciously, they understand that if a business can afford to indiscriminately slash 30% off the top just because it happens to be Memorial Day weekend.
Right, like what does the holiday have to do with the margins?
Exactly. It implies the base price is largely fictional. It cheapens the perception of the core offering. So the source material argues that a discount must be tethered to a logical, transparent reason. If you explain the mechanical why behind the price reduction, it buffers against cheapening the product.
It provides a rational justification.
Yes, a ring of truth.
The text gives a really practical example of this from the world of seminar marketing. Instead of just offering a generic, early bird special where you save $100 if you register by Friday, they use a very specific narrative in the marketing copy.
It's a brilliant narrative, actually.
Yeah, they essentially tell the prospect, look, if we have to keep chasing you with direct mail, sending brochure after brochure, we will eventually convince you to come. But we are going to spend a lot of time and money on postage and printing to do it.
Right.
So it's far better for us to just give that money directly to you as savings in exchange for your immediate registration.
It's an incredibly effective piece of framing. I mean, it accomplishes a few things simultaneously.
Like what?
Well, first, it flatters the prospect with a presumptive close-like, assuming they are inevitably going to attend.
Oh, right. We're going to get you eventually.
Exactly. But more critically, it provides a strictly economic, verifiable justification for the price drop. It opens the books, so to speak, and shows the buyer the internal math of the marketing operation.
I see the logic there, but let me pressure test this because I want to look at it through the eyes of a modern buyer.
Sure, go ahead.
If I'm a consumer, do I actually care about a company's postage costs or like their customer acquisition metrics? When I'm shopping online, I just want the cheapest price. Does the customer really care why they are saving the $100 as long as they actually save it?
Well, they don't care about your operational costs, no. But they do care deeply about the internal logic of the transaction. We are sense-making creatures, right? When a business says, here is $100 off, it triggers a subtle alarm. What's wrong with the product? Why are they so desperate to sell this?
Right, like, is this about to expire?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when the business says, look, marketing costs me money. If you act now, you save me that money, so we can just split the difference. You are treating the buyer as an intelligent participant in a shared economic reality.
Okay, I like that.
You're shifting the dynamic from an adversarial, seller trying to lure a buyer to a cooperative, let's team up to beat the system scenario.
That is such an interesting distinction. It's almost like you're uniting against a common enemy, which in this case is the postal service or the advertising platform. Like, hey, let's not give Mark Zuckerberg our money. Let's just keep it between us.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the perfect way to look at it. And it completely preserves the price integrity. The full price remains the valid, true value of the product. The discount isn't a reduction in the product's value. It's a payment to the customer for performing an action that reduces the company's operational overhead. The ring of truth works because, in most cases, it actually is the truth.
Because acquiring a customer over a 3-month drip campaign really is objectively more expensive than acquiring them on day one.
Precisely.
So the immediate application for the listener here is to audit their current promotions. If you're going to run a discount to create urgency, you cannot just blast out a promo code.
No, definitely not.
You have to weave the justification into the copy, tell them exactly why this trade makes financial sense for you, the seller. It just completely removes the desperation from the pitch.
It forces transparency, which builds trust. And honestly, trust is far more durable asset than a temporary spike in sales driven by some naked discount.
Now, that first concept is primarily about saving money, right? Like avoiding future marketing costs.
Right.
But the source material takes this a massive step further when it introduces what it calls the endless chain. This is where we move from defensive discounting to offensive discounting.
Oh, this is where it gets really fun.
Yeah, we aren't just saving money anymore. We're using our profit margin to actively buy new marketing assets.
This is where the quid pro quo strategy becomes highly tactical. The text references some fascinating historical examples from the 1970s, specifically looking at legendary direct sales figures like Howard Bonnell from the World Book Encyclopedia Company.
Oh man, encyclopedias.
Right. And Paul J. Meyer from the Success Motivation Institute. I mean, these were organizations built entirely on face-to-face kitchen table selling.
Right. Imagine that classic setup. A salesperson is literally sitting in a family's living room. They've spent 2 hours demonstrating the encyclopedias. The parents see the value for their kids, but they just hit a wall on the price. It's just too expensive.
And in that specific environment, walking out the door without a signed contract meant losing the sale forever. There was no, oh, I'll email you a follow-up link.
No, it was now or never.
Exactly. So the salesperson had to have a mechanism to lower the price to close the deal. But they couldn't just drop the number out of thin air. They would offer the concession, but they'd attach a rigorous condition to it.
What was the condition?
The buyer could only unlock the lower price if they provided referrals. But not just names. Specifically, securing appointments with at least 2 friends, neighbors, or colleagues right then and there.
Wow. And the text actually mentions a more modern equivalent that illustrates this perfectly. An electrical contractor finishes pitching a large rewiring job to a homeowner. The homeowner balks at the final number.
Right.
And the contractor says, I can give you a better rate, but only if you sit down right now and fill out these referral postcards that I will mail to your neighbors on your behalf.
I mean, think about the psychology of what is happening in that exact moment.
It's intense.
It is. The buyer desires the lower price. They want to feel like they won the negotiation. The seller agrees to give them that win, but demands that the buyer put their own social capital on the line to earn it. By demanding the referrals on the spot, the seller is effectively transforming the customer into an active participant in their lead generation system.
Okay, I have to stop you there because this is where theory hits reality for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I'm sitting at my kitchen table and a contractor tells me I have to start filling out postcards or calling my neighbors while he watches me just to get a discount, I'm going to feel incredibly manipulated.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a hostage situation. Isn't that extraordinarily aggressive? How does a business owner execute that today without completely destroying the rapport they just spent hours building?
It's a very fair critique. And honestly, the execution is everything. If it's delivered as a threat like, give me names or you pay full price, it will absolutely cause resentment.
Right, it would just feel gross.
But it shouldn't be framed as a hostage situation. It must be framed as a literal transaction. The contractor isn't holding the price hostage. They are offering to purchase a service from the buyer.
Purchasing a service. Okay, how does that sound in practice?
The dialogue sounds more like, my standard rate is my standard rate. However, a huge portion of my budget goes to marketing. If you are willing to introduce me to 3 neighbors who might need this service, you save me a week of marketing labor.
Ah.
I am happy to pay you for those introductions by applying a $500 credit to your bill today.
Oh, okay. So it goes right back to the ring of truth. You're explicitly stating that you are buying the leads from them out of your own marketing budget and applying that payment as a credit to their invoice.
Precisely. You are monetizing the margin you are likely going to concede anyway.
Oh.
And to address your point about demanding it on the spot, why is that immediacy so critical? Why can't the contractor just say, hey, I'll give you the discount today and you just email me some names next week?
Oh, I know this one because next week never comes. The moment the contractor's van pulls out of the driveway, the homeowner's motivation to think about electrical rewiring drops to absolute zero.
Exactly. The immediacy is the enforcement mechanism of the quid pro quo. Human nature dictates that if the condition is deferred, it will be forgotten or ignored. I mean, a vague promise of future referrals is a completely worthless currency.
Totally worthless.
By enforcing the action in the moment, filling out the cards, writing the email introduction while still on the Zoom call, the seller guarantees they actually receive the asset they are paying for.
That's a really great translation to the modern era. You're on a B2B sales call. The prospect asks for a price break on your SaaS implementation fee. You say, I can waive the onboarding fee, but in exchange, I need you to open LinkedIn right now while we're on this call and send an introductory message to 2 other operations managers in your network.
Yes.
You watch them do it, then you apply the discount.
And look at the net result of that. If you think about the cost of customer acquisition, the advertising spend, the cold outreach, the time spent nurturing completely cold leads,
It's astronomically expensive.
right. So sacrificing a few $100s of margin on a current deal in exchange for 2 or 3 warm, personally endorsed introductions is arguably the most efficient marketing spend a business could ever make.
It's essentially self-funding your lead generation. But the critical takeaway for the listener here is discipline, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You have to hold the line. If you offer the quid pro quo, I'll lower the price if you give me the referrals, and the prospect refuses, you cannot then cave and give them the discount anyway.
No, you can't.
Because if you do, you look desperate, and you've proven your conditions were just a bluff. You must be willing to let the original price stand if they refuse the trade.
Which requires a significant amount of conviction.
Yeah.
And that conviction is put to the ultimate test when we move from consumer-level transactions to high-ticket, premium B2B environments. I mean, the source material emphasizes that the stakes get much higher, but the golden rule of the chapter becomes even more absolute.
Right, let's explore that. Because how does this scale? The rule outlined in the text is unwavering. Never, never, ever discount, purely because a client wants to negotiate or because you feel competitive pressure.
Right.
At the premium level, you only discount for operational efficiency.
And to illustrate this, the author, Dan Kennedy, actually opened his own books. He shares the specific pricing architecture for his high-end copywriting and consulting practice.
And the numbers are wild.
Yeah, the numbers he uses are specifically designed to repel casual buyers and establish extreme authority.
He states that his base daily fee is $18,800. So if a client needs a project that takes 10 days, the baseline fee is a flat $188,000.
It is a formidable number, and it places him entirely outside the realm of commodity pricing. When you're charging nearly $200,000 for a project, you are dealing with sophisticated buyers. You're dealing with corporate boards, CEOs, and inevitably, procurement departments.
Procurement departments. And procurement departments exist for one reason: to extract naked discounts. They are professionally trained to grind vendors down. So how does Kennedy handle that pressure?
Well, he admits that he does offer discounts on that $188,000 fee, but only under ironclad operational conditions.
Okay, like what?
For instance, he will reduce the fee if the client agrees to book consecutive days back-to-back rather than spreading the 10 days randomly throughout the year. Or he will offer a concession if they bundle multiple related campaigns together into one prepaid contract.
Let's analyze the rationale behind those specific conditions, because why is there a functional difference to the consultant between 10 random days and 10 consecutive days? The total hours worked remain exactly the same.
It's all about context switching and ramp-up time. Think about it. If I'm a consultant and I have to work on your project for 1 day in March, 2 days in June, and another day in September, I have to refamiliarize myself with your brand, your market, and your previous materials every single time. It's incredibly inefficient.
That makes total sense.
But if I block out 10 consecutive days, the creative momentum compounds. The research I do on Monday directly fuels the writing I do on Thursday.
Right. The operational friction is drastically reduced. And when a client pre-books or bundles related projects, they are providing something highly valuable to the consultant: calendar security.
And shared research efficiencies, yeah.
Right. The consultant doesn't have to spend unbilled hours searching for their next gig because the revenue is locked in. Therefore, the concession isn't arbitrary. It's actually a calculated refund of the operational overhead the client just saved the consultant.
But let me play the role of the cynical corporate buyer here for a second.
Oh, please do.
If I'm a VP at a Fortune 500 company and I look at a proposal for $188,000, I'm going to tell the consultant, look, we love your work, but we need you to come down 15% to fit this quarter's budget.
Classic procurement line.
Right. And if the consultant starts talking about consecutive days and context switching, I might just laugh and say, I don't care about your context switching. I care about my budget. Take the 15% cut or we go to another agency.
Oh.
Are you really suggesting a consultant should risk a nearly $200,000 contract over an operational principle?
You're highlighting the exact moment of terror that causes most B2B service providers to just fold.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's a game of chicken. But if you simply accept the 15% cut because of budget pressure, you are telling the VP that your $188,000 quote was padded.
You are.
You're setting a precedent that your margins are highly negotiable. You will never, ever have pricing power with that organization again.
So how do you hold the frame without losing the deal? Because that's the real trick.
By using the operational conditions as a shield. You do not say a flat no, which creates an impasse.
Right.
You offer a structural alternative. You look the VP in the eye and say, I completely understand the budget constraints for this quarter. Unfortunately, I cannot alter the fee for the scope and timeline as currently proposed, as my pricing is tied directly to the resources required.
Strong start.
However, if your team is willing to compress the timeline and schedule all strategy sessions consecutively next month, eliminating our administrative overhead, I can apply an operational credit of 10% to the total.
That is a brilliant linguistic pivot. You aren't calling it a discount, you're calling it an operational credit.
It changes the entire nature of the conversation. You are telling the procurement department, I will not give you my margin, but I will show you how to structure your purchasing behavior to unlock a lower price.
Wow.
You retain total control of the frame. If they want the lower price, they have to jump through your operational hoop. If they refuse to jump, the original price stands and its integrity remains perfectly intact.
I want to give our listeners a mental model for this because it feels very similar to how companies handle corporate finance.
Oh, the CapEx versus OpEx thing.
Yes, exactly. It's the difference between operating expenses, or OpEx, and capital expenditures, CapEx. If you treat your pricing like an operating expense that can just be casually trimmed, the client will constantly try to trim it.
Of course they will.
But if you treat your pricing like a fixed capital investment, where the only way to lower the cost is to change the fundamental architecture of the project, you force the client to respect the process.
That is a highly accurate analogy. You are establishing a negotiation perimeter. You're defining exactly what is negotiable, like the timeline, the payment terms, the bundling, and what is absolutely non-negotiable, the core value of your expertise.
Which brings us to an incredibly fascinating psychological dilemma, though.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we're talking about defending a fee of $188,000 for a 10-day copywriting project. I mean, even with an operational credit, that is a staggering amount of money.
It really is.
How do you possibly justify a number that high to a prospect in the first place? How do you keep them from just falling out of their chair before you even get to the negotiation phase?
You do it by executing a fundamental cognitive reframe. You have to forcibly shift the prospect's attention entirely away from the cost and redirect it toward the yield.
The yield.
This is the concept of selling money at a discount. Let's unpack the math the author uses in the text because it's honestly the most powerful psychological tool in the entire chapter.
Yeah, let's break it down.
If a client is staring at an invoice for $188,000, their brain is interpreting that as a massive loss of capital. The consultant's job is to completely rewrite that narrative.
And how do they do that?
Well, the consultant begins by breaking down the lifespan of the asset being created. In this case, sales copy. The consultant might say, look, this campaign we are building isn't a one-off event. It is an asset your company will use continuously for the next 5 years.
Okay, makes sense.
Therefore, if we amortize the initial $188,000 investment over a 5-year lifespan, the actual annualized cost to your business is only $37,600.
Which is an immediate relief valve.
Right.
You've moved the psychological anchor from nearly $200,000 down to under $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
But then comes the knockout punch.
Yes. The focus then shifts from the amortized cost to the projected revenue.
Okay.
The consultant continues. Now, this copy is designed to sell your high-margin product. Based on your current traffic, let's conservatively project that this new campaign sells $500,000 worth of goods each year.
Okay, doing the math.
Over its 5-year lifespan, that singular asset will generate $2.5 million in gross revenue. You are investing $188,000 today to acquire a reliable mechanism that yields $2.5 million. That is a return on investment of over 1,400%.
It is the ultimate apples to oranges comparison. You stop comparing your consulting fee to what other consultants charge, and you start comparing your fee to the massive pile of money the client is about to make.
Exactly.
You aren't charging them $188,000. You're offering them a $2.3 million discount on future revenue.
You're no longer selling a service which is viewed as an expense. You are selling a financial instrument. And what's crucial here is that this isn't just clever wordplay. It is a profound shift in how the buyer evaluates risk.
I want to pause on that because, it sounds incredible in a book, but in reality, ROI is often speculative.
Oh, for sure.
If I'm pitching a CFO and I say, hey, my marketing plan will make you $2.5 million, they are going to look at my spreadsheet, roll their eyes and say, yeah, right. Those are monopoly numbers. You can't guarantee that revenue, but you want my $188,000 guaranteed today.
That's a very fair point.
So how do you sell future money if the client is inherently skeptical of your projections?
That is the crux of high-ticket selling. If you dictate the projections to them, they will naturally reject them as overly optimistic. The secret is that you do not present the ROI. You discover it together. You build the financial model collaboratively during the discovery phase.
So you use their own numbers against them.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
You ask the CFO, what is your current conversion rate? What is the lifetime value of a customer? If we implement this new architecture and we only improve efficiency by a highly conservative 2%, what does that equate to in top-line revenue over 36 months? You make them do the math. When the prospect calculates the $2.5 million yield using their own conservative metrics, the number becomes indisputably real to them. The skepticism dissolves because they built the projection themselves.
And once they own the projection, the fee suddenly looks tiny.
Exactly.
To illustrate this cognitive shift, the text actually details a brilliant stage demonstration that Kennedy used to perform at live seminars. It perfectly encapsulates how human beings can be manipulated to completely ignore cost when the gain is framed correctly.
Oh, I love this example.
It is a masterful piece of theatrical psychology. The speaker is on stage pitching a high-priced money-making program. To demonstrate the concept of value, he calls 3 volunteers up from the audience.
Right.
He pulls a crisp, real $100 bill from his pocket and announces, "We are going to hold an auction. Who wants to buy this $100 bill?"
Let me set the scene for this because it's so illustrative. Naturally, the volunteers start bidding. One person jokingly bids $1, the next bids $20. Eventually, someone who understands the absolute objective value of the object bids $99. The speaker hands the $100 bill to the person who bid $99 and collects their money.
And the volunteer has just executed a perfectly rational economic transaction. They spent $99 to make a guaranteed instant $1 profit.
Right. But then the speaker pivots. He turns away from the volunteers and addresses the entire auditorium. He projects a massive photo of a stack of currency on the screen behind him, and he asks the crowd, "What if I let you buy 1,000 of these $100 bills for just $1 each?"
And in that exact moment, the energy in the room fundamentally transforms. The speaker has executed a flawless cognitive reframe.
Because all focus instantly leaves the price, the $1, and fixates entirely on the gain, the $100.
Yes.
The audience is no longer thinking about the act of spending. They're entirely consumed by the fantasy of acquiring.
The price is now felt as a monumental discount rather than an expense. The lesson here is that human beings do not evaluate price in a vacuum. Price is always relative to the perceived value of the outcome.
Always.
If the prospect is evaluating you purely as an expense line item, they will inevitably shop around for a cheaper expense. But if you have successfully framed your offering as a high-yield investment, they will look for the highest reliable return.
So the practical takeaway for anyone listening who struggles to justify their pricing is simple but profound. Stop defending your costs.
Right.
Stop talking about how many hours you put in or how hard your team works or the rising cost of your software stack. The client does not care about your labor.
They really don't.
Start translating your price exclusively into the financial, operational, or emotional ROI the customer will receive. If your B2B software saves a logistics company 20 hours of administrative work a week, do the math with them.
Calculate it out.
Calculate the payroll savings over a year and show them how your software subscription is essentially allowing them to buy that saved capital at a massive discount.
When the yield is undeniable, the price becomes highly elastic. You insulate yourself from commodity price shopping because you are no longer selling a commodity.
This entire discussion about maximizing perceived value actually leads us to a really counterintuitive problem, though.
Right.
We've just spent all this time discussing how to justify incredibly high prices by framing them as massive ROI. But what happens when a business actually wants to offer an insanely generous deal to the public?
Like a legitimate steal.
Yeah, let's say you have an offer that is genuinely, legitimately a steal, a massive discount with absolutely no strings attached. Traditional economic theory would suggest that people should be breaking down your door to get it right.
You would definitely assume so.
Yeah.
I mean, the standard assumption is that lower price equals higher demand, and the lowest possible price should equal infinite demand. But human psychology is far more complex than that. The author highlights in the final section of the chapter that extreme generosity, when presented without context, actually triggers intense consumer skepticism.
This is the too good to be true hurdle. And I find this absolutely fascinating because we have all experienced this as consumers.
Oh, constantly.
You're scrolling through social media, you see an ad for a product that just seems way too cheap, and your immediate reaction is not, wow, what an incredible bargain.
No.
Your immediate reaction is, okay, what is the catch? Is this a scam? Is it going to break in a week? Are they going to auto-enroll me in some impossible to cancel subscription?
That is the brain's risk assessment mechanism firing. When a massive discount or an incredibly generous bonus lacks a rational explanation, it lacks credibility. The consumer experiences cognitive dissonance. They just cannot reconcile the high value of the item with the low cost being asked. And counterintuitively, if the business does not ask for a quid pro quo, if they do not intentionally insert a hurdle or a condition, the public simply won't believe the offer is real, and the promotion will fail.
The source material proves this with hard data, too, through a split test that the author ran for a regional chain of optical stores.
Oh, this split test is amazing.
It's so good. This was a sizzling summer sales event designed to drive massive foot traffic. The core offer they developed was just staggering. If a customer bought a regular pair of everyday glasses, they would receive a free pair of prescription sunglasses, plus a free family pass to a local water park.
I mean, for a local retail environment, that is an extraordinarily aggressive and generous offer.
Almost too generous.
In fact, it was so good that the marketing team worried it would backfire. It felt entirely too good to be true, absent some sort of logical requirement. It felt like a bait and switch.
So, to test the psychology, they divided their market and ran two distinct versions of the advertising campaign. Test A was the straight, naked offer. Buy the everyday glasses, get the prescription sunglasses, and the water park pass for absolutely free.
Right, no strings attached.
Come on down, no strings attached.
And Test B presented the exact same core offer, but with one critical, intentionally introduced point of friction. They added a requirement.
The hurdle.
Yes. To unlock the free sunglasses and the water park pass, the customer must physically bring in a donation of 2 canned food items or make a $10 cash donation for a local food bank.
Now, if we look at this strictly through the lens of modern marketing, where every tech company is obsessed with frictionless checkout and removing all barriers to entry, Test A should perform vastly better.
It should dominate.
Right. Test A is perfectly frictionless. You just walk in and get free stuff. Test B requires the customer to do work. They have to go to their pantry, remember to put the cans in their car, or surrender an extra $10. It is a literal cost added to a free offer.
Yet the empirical data showed the exact opposite. Test B absolutely crushed Test A.
Unbelievable.
The response rate, the foot traffic, and the total sales were significantly higher when the charitable donation requirement was included.
Why does putting a roadblock in front of a customer make them run faster toward the register?
Because the friction resolved the cognitive dissonance. The charity requirement provided the quid pro quo. It gave the consumer a rational, believable narrative for why this incredible offer existed in the first place. When a consumer looked at Test A, they thought, this is a trick. The sunglasses are probably cheap plastic junk, or they're going to overcharge me for the lenses.
But when they look at Test B, they think, I get it. The optical store is running a big community charity drive for the food bank. They partnered with the water park to generate a ton of donations. They're taking a loss to do a good deed.
Exactly. The catch was the canned peas. And because the catch was noble, transparent, and clearly stated, the skepticism evaporated instantly.
It makes total sense when you put it like that.
The offer transitioned in the consumer's mind from a highly suspicious retail trap into a legitimate, community-driven event. The hurdle actually validated the authenticity of the premiums being given away.
That is a profound insight into human behavior. It's the psychological equivalent of, putting a velvet rope outside an empty nightclub.
Oh, great analogy.
The barrier to entry, even if it is entirely artificial, implies that what lies beyond the barrier is highly valuable and exclusive. If you just leave the doors wide open, people assume the club is dead.
It is a critical lesson for anyone designing promotions today. Friction is generally viewed as the enemy of conversion when you are executing a mundane task, like filling out a shipping address. But friction is absolutely necessary when you are trying to establish a perception of high value.
Right.
Without friction, extreme generosity is perceived as desperation.
So how do we apply this today? Let's say a software company is doing a massive launch, and they want to give away a highly valuable training course as a free bonus to anyone who signs up for a trial. If they just say, here is a free $500 course, the user might think it's worthless rehashed content, but if they say, to unlock this $500 advanced training, you must complete a mandatory 5-minute onboarding survey so we can tailor the algorithm to your business, suddenly the course has perceived weight.
Precisely. You are exchanging the premium bonus for data. The user understands the trade. They think, oh, they're giving me this expensive course because I am giving them valuable market research. The quid pro quo legitimizes the generosity.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground in this deep dive. We've navigated the psychology of the ring of truth, explored how 1970s encyclopedia tactics translate to modern B2B lead generation, dissected the operational leverage of high-ticket consulting,
Completely reframed how to present massive ROI.
yes, and proven why extreme generosity requires a hurdle to be believed. Let's synthesize all of these complex mechanics into the soul of the chapter.
If we tie all 5 of these distinct operational strategies together, a very clear unifying philosophy emerges regarding how a business should view pricing.
And what's that?
A discount, in the hands of a strategic operator, is never a weapon of surrender used to appease a demanding prospect. It is a highly calibrated tool of exchange.
It is a currency. Whether you're trading a portion of your margin for tangible marketing assets like warm referrals on a Zoom call, or trading it for operational efficiency like consecutive booking days to eliminate context switching, or simply trading it for consumer trust via a charitable hurdle, the rule remains absolute.
Never drop your price without extracting something of equal or greater value in return.
Never. By enforcing that rule, by making every single concession strictly conditional, you build an impenetrable perimeter around your profit margins. You validate your original pricing architecture, ensuring the market knows your numbers are not just arbitrary.
And ironically, by making your discounts harder to obtain, you actually increase the perceived authority and value of your brand in the eyes of the consumer.
It fundamentally comes down to respecting your own value enough to demand respect from the marketplace. The moment you give a naked discount, you strip away that respect and you just invite endless negotiation.
Yeah, you open the floodgates.
But the moment you demand a quid pro quo, you fortify your positioning. It transforms the pricing conversation from an adversarial tug of war where one side has to lose into a collaborative negotiation of mutual value.
It changes you from a vendor being squeezed by procurement into a partner optimizing an operation.
So now that you know how to master the art of the conditional discount, hold your boundaries, and protect your margins against downward pressure, how do you survive in a macro environment where your biggest competitors aren't just discounting, but are actually giving their core products away for absolute zero?
Oh, that's the big question.
How do you maintain a premium price when the floor of the market literally collapses beneath you? Well, in our next deep dive, we are going to tackle the incredibly complex and often destructive economics of free E and how to make sure the freemium model doesn't just cannibalize your entire business. Until then, hold the line on your pricing and keep digging deeper.
So imagine you run a business. It could be, a local bakery, a consulting firm, a tech startup. It doesn't really matter.
Right, any kind of business.
Yeah. And you spent years building your client base, dialing in your margins, getting everything perfect.
You've put the work in.
Exactly. And then tomorrow morning, you walk in and see this massive, well-funded competitor setting up shop right across the street.
Ah, the ultimate nightmare scenario.
It gets worse. They are offering the exact same product or service you sell, but their price tag is $0.
Wow.
They're literally giving it away for free. So the immediate question is, are you bankrupt by Friday?
Well, for a significant majority of business owners, that scenario triggers an immediate, visceral fight-or-flight response.
I would definitely be freaking out.
Naturally. The instinct is to just, look at the ledger, panic, and start figuring out how to slash your own prices to stay relevant.
Right, because you assume that if the competitor's price is $0, the market's willingness to pay has just evaporated.
Exactly. You assume it's game over.
But the core premise of what we are looking at today turns that entirely upside down, doesn't it?
It really does. It sounds like a total paradox.
Because we are going to explore the idea that a competitor giving things away for free might actually be the ultimate catalyst for increasing your own profit margins.
Yeah, when you move past standard spreadsheet economics and actually dive into the psychology of how human beings perceive value, it changes everything.
Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are unpacking the mechanics of how to survive and mathematically thrive when your competitors are undercutting you to the absolute floor.
It's such a crucial topic because a free alternative can actually act as a massive filtration system for your business.
A filtration system.
Yeah, it pulls away a specific type of problematic consumer and leaves you with a highly concentrated pool of premium buyers.
Which is wild to think about. So whether you are finalizing a pricing strategy for a new product or trying to navigate a crowded freelance market, you're in the right place.
We're going to break down why charging a premium is frequently a much safer, more sustainable strategy than just racing to the bottom.
And we are drawing our insights today from the frameworks developed by marketing strategists Dan Kennedy and Jason Mars.
Specifically from their text, No B.S. price strategy.
Right. And these two have spent decades auditing and restructuring the pricing models of thousands of businesses.
They really have. And our mission for this deep dive is to synthesize their findings on two major forces.
Which are what they identify as the cancer of free and the psychological trap of commodity thinking.
Yeah, we're going to dissect why competing on price is essentially a one-way ticket to mediocrity.
And we will look at how to audit your market to uncover the hidden, non-financial costs of free alternatives.
Plus, we'll explore why breaking out of that commodity mindset is arguably the most critical cognitive leap you can make in business.
So let's just start with that first major paradigm shift the authors introduce, the whole idea of the word free.
Right. Historically, in the golden age of advertising, free was the holy grail.
Oh yeah, you put it in a headline and you basically guaranteed a massive response.
But Kennedy and Mars argue that this word has metastasized into a highly destructive force.
Destructive how? Like, why is it so bad now?
Well, you have to look at the historical context. In traditional direct response marketing, free was just a tactical lever.
Like a loss leader.
Exactly. You offered a free consultation to sell a retaining fee, or a free sample to sell a subscription. It was a transaction.
The transaction, right? A stepping stone.
But the offers highlight this macro-cultural shift over the last few decades.
They actually frame it as a transition from a society rooted in independence to a culture heavily steeped in entitlement.
Yeah, they argue consumers have been conditioned to expect a tremendous amount of intellectual property, media, and services without offering any financial exchange whatsoever.
So it's no longer just a clever marketing hook.
No, it's hardened into a baseline consumer expectation. People just want stuff for nothing now.
And they back this up with a study from Piper Jaffray, right, the investment bank.
They do, and it really puts numbers to this behavioral shift. The study focused on teenagers and how they acquired digital music.
And the data there was kind of shocking.
Yeah, it showed that only 40% of these teenagers were legally purchasing their music online.
Wow. So less than half.
Exactly. A
Ew.
full 57% openly admitted to acquiring their music through pirated illegal networks.
But the really crucial data point wasn't just the theft, it was the justification, wasn't it?
That's the scariest part. These consumers saw absolutely no moral or ethical issue with taking the product for free.
They just felt entitled to it.
Great. And because of that normalized behavior, the willingness of the broader demographic to pay even a nominal fee just plummeted.
Like paying just 99 cents for a song.
Yeah, that willingness dropped from 25% to 18% in the span of a single year.
That 99-cent threshold is such a fascinating psychological barrier to me.
It really is. In behavioral economics, there's a concept often referred to as the penny gap.
The penny gap, I love that term.
The cognitive leap a consumer has to make to go from paying $0 to paying one single penny is vastly larger than the leap required to go from $1 to $2.
Because when a product is free, the consumer doesn't really have to engage the critical evaluating part of their brain at all.
Exactly. There's zero friction, no risk assessment.
But the second you introduce a price of even a penny, you force the brain to ask questions.
Like, is this worth my money? Do I want to enter my credit card? Do I even trust this platform?
And Kennedy and Mars are pointing out that when an entire generation is trained to bypass that evaluation process, reintroducing that friction is nearly impossible.
Because everything is expected to be free now.
I mean, I see how that applies to digital media. The media conglomerates spent decades subsidizing the cost of news and TV with advertising.
Right. They essentially train the public that content doesn't cost the consumer anything out of pocket.
And then the internet arrived, and newspapers put all their written journalism online for free, just chasing ad impressions.
And now, 20 years later, they are trying to put up paywalls and charge subscription fees.
And consumers are absolutely outraged.
You can't train an animal to expect free meals for its entire life and then suddenly hand it a bill.
No, you really can't. And this is where Kennedy and Mars look at the broader cultural implications.
They observe this trend through a sociological lens. They argue this expectation of free value is widely encouraged by modern cultural and political structures.
Right, they describe this growing societal lust for unearned benefits.
Yeah, a systemic transfer of responsibility where the consumer feels entirely justified in demanding the fruits of someone else's labor.
Whether that's a software developer, a journalist, or whoever, they want it without offering a fair market exchange.
Exactly. But let's isolate the economic impact of that mentality for a listener who is actually trying to run a business today.
Yeah, because if the cultural baseline shifts to a point where a large segment expects everything for free, that volume-based business model starts to look incredibly fragile.
Highly fragile. If you are relying on razor-thin margins and massive customer volume, the math just breaks.
Because you cannot make up in volume what you are losing in margin if the margin is literally negative.
It creates a complete structural collapse. When you design your business to cater to that demographic, you aren't building a resilient customer base.
Kennedy and Mars actually refer to this demographic as entitlement junkies, which is quite a phrase.
It's blunt, but accurate for their framework. These are consumers who possess zero brand loyalty. They evaluate you purely on a spreadsheet.
The moment a competitor offers them an extra 5% discount, they're gone.
Or if someone throws in a free shipping offer, they will abandon you without a second thought.
So building a business around a demographic that fundamentally resents paying you is just a recipe for endless frustration.
It's exhausting and unprofitable.
Okay, but let me challenge the absolutism of that for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Because in the modern tech landscape, the freemium model is practically the default architecture for growth, right?
It is very common, yes.
Like a SaaS startup gives away a free tier of their software to acquire 1 million users, and then they monetize the top 3%.
Or a local fitness center gives away a 1-week free trial to get people through the door.
Exactly. So if free attracts these problematic, disloyal customers, are the authors suggesting we should never, ever offer anything for free?
Well, they're not advocating for the complete eradication of the word from your vocabulary.
Okay, good.
But they are demanding that it be treated like highly volatile material. It requires strict containment.
Containment. What does that look like in practice?
The distinction they make is all about boundaries and conditionality. A free offer must be a rigid quid pro quo.
So a direct exchange.
Yes. The consumer receives the free item only in direct exchange for something of tangible value to your business.
Like their qualified contact information, maybe.
Exactly. Or their physical presence in your store during a low traffic hour, or a warm referral to a new client.
It just cannot be an open-ended entitlement.
Right. Because the danger isn't the free trial itself.
Yeah. The danger is offering your core premium value indefinitely for $0, just hoping that goodwill turns into revenue later.
Precisely. Because the human brain relies heavily on anchoring.
Anchoring is so powerful.
It is. When a consumer first encounters a product, their brain searches for a price anchor to determine its intrinsic worth.
So if you introduce your flagship product at a price of $0, you have firmly anchored its value at $0 in their mind.
You haven't proven that the product is so great they will eventually pay for it.
You've just proven that the product isn't worth charging for.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. Like if a consultant normally charges $5,000 for an audit, but they give it away to 50 people just to build buzz.
They're doing two highly destructive things there.
First, they're telling past clients who paid the $5,000 that they drastically overpaid.
Yeah, that they were essentially taken advantage of.
And second, they are signaling to the 50 people receiving it for free that the audit is actually worthless.
So when you try to charge them $5,000 the following year, their brain rejects it. The anchor was set at $0.
Wow. Which brings us to arguably the most critical strategic pivot in the text.
Right, the pivot.
If you accept that competing on price attracts the worst kind of buyer, and that giving things away destroys your perceived value.
How do you actually maneuver when a competitor, or even the government, starts offering your exact service for free?
And the answer lies in identifying and weaponizing what Kennedy and Mars call the hidden costs.
This is a phenomenal concept. The fundamental premise here is that absolute, true free does not exist in the physical world.
Every single free offering carries a concealed non-financial tax.
And if you can articulate those hidden costs to the market, you will discover a highly lucrative segment of the population.
People who are desperately willing to pay a premium just to avoid paying that non-financial tax.
The most compelling illustration of this in the text comes from Jason Marr's own family, actually.
Right. His wife operates a pediatric therapy practice.
Yes. And this isn't a hypothetical business. This is a highly competitive local market.
And her direct competitor is the local public school system and government programs.
Which provide pediatric therapy to families for literally $0 out of pocket.
So from a purely mathematical, rational consumer standpoint, that is an unwinnable war.
Standard economic theory would dictate that to survive against a $0 alternative, Jason and his wife would have to ruthlessly slash their overhead.
Operate out of a cheaper facility, cut their hourly rate to the bone just to scrape by.
But they went in the completely opposite direction.
They did. They increased their rates from $150 an hour to $250 an hour.
And the result of that price increase wasn't bankruptcy.
It was a wait list.
A wait list. Which forces us to look at the invisible variables in that transaction.
Right. What is the parent actually buying for $250 that they aren't getting from the free government program?
They are buying the elimination of friction, and they are buying autonomy.
Because when a family opts for the free government therapy, they aren't just walking in and getting care, are they?
No, they are paying an immense tax in the form of bureaucratic red tape.
They have to spend hours filling out intake forms.
Waiting and holding patterns, attending mandatory evaluation meetings.
Plus, they pay with a total loss of agency because the state assigns the therapist.
The parent has absolutely no choice in the methodology or the specific practitioner.
And there's a privacy component mentioned in the text, too.
Yes, which is a massive hidden cost for many families. When you utilize the free public option, the child's developmental delays often become part of a permanent government or school file.
And for a certain demographic of parents, the idea of their child's medical history being permanently logged like that is just unacceptable.
So Jason Mars doesn't market his wife's practice by saying, we have better toys in the waiting room.
He markets directly against the hidden costs of the free alternative.
He signals to the market, if you value your time, if you demand the right to choose the best practitioner, and if you require absolute privacy, we are the only option.
So the $250 isn't just paying for the therapy. It's almost like a ransom paid to avoid the nightmare of the free alternative.
That's a great way to put it.
I want to try an analogy here to see if it maps to the everyday consumer experience.
Let's hear it.
Think about driving down a suburban street and seeing a used couch sitting on the curb with a piece of cardboard taped to it that says FRE.
Okay, classic scenario.
Now, the financial cost of that couch is $0. But the hidden costs are astronomical.
Oh, for sure.
You have to figure out how to transport it. You have to call a friend with a truck, owe them a favor, physically lift this incredibly heavy piece of furniture.
Risk throwing out your lower back.
Exactly. Navigate it up a narrow flight of stairs. And perhaps the most terrifying hidden cost.
Bed bugs.
Yes. You run the very real risk of introducing bed bugs into your home, which would cost thousands of dollars to exterminate.
That maps perfectly to the psychological mechanism the authors are describing.
Right, so suddenly, go into a high-end furniture store, paying $2,000 for a brand new couch, and having two professionals deliver it directly into your living room.
While you just sit on the porch drinking coffee?
Exactly. It doesn't feel like an expensive luxury anymore. It feels like a brilliant, rational investment.
You're paying to avoid the physical labor, the social debt to your friend, and the biological hazard of the free couch.
That transition in perception is amazing, seeing the $2,000 couch as a shield against hidden costs.
And that is the core of premium pricing. The text uses a great scenario involving a high-end dining experience to illustrate this even further.
Oh, the steakhouse example.
Yes. Let's look at Morton's Steakhouse. Imagine a couple who has saved up to celebrate their 10-year wedding anniversary.
Okay, so the stakes for the evening are very high.
Exactly. They've hired a babysitter, they've dressed up, driven downtown. They walk into this beautifully lit, mahogany-paneled restaurant expecting a flawless evening.
This isn't just a Tuesday night dinner. This is a highly emotionally charged event.
Precisely. Now imagine the general manager meets them at the hostess stand, looking completely frantic.
Oh.
And he says, "I am so sorry, but our entire busing staff just walked out. We are in a crisis."
Okay.
But he says, "If you are willing to put on an apron, go into the dining room, and help us clear plates and wipe down tables for the next hour, I will completely comp your meals. You will eat your anniversary dinner for absolute free."
I mean, that would be incredibly offensive to the couple. The answer is obviously no.
But why? Think about it. The financial value of the free meal might be $300.
That's a good point.
From a strict dollars and cents perspective, earning $300 for an hour of clearing plates is an incredibly high hourly wage
But almost no one in that specific context would accept the offer.
because the hidden cost of the free dinner is the complete destruction of the romantic atmosphere
The violation of their social status in that environment.
and the absolute ruination of the anniversary they had been looking forward to for months.
The non-financial tax is exponentially higher than the financial reward.
Exactly. And we see this exact same cognitive calculus happen at airports every single day.
Oh, the overbooked flight scenario. I think almost everyone listening has probably witnessed this.
You are sitting at the gate, it's crowded, everyone is exhausted, and the gate agent gets on the microphone.
They announce the flight is oversold and offer a completely free round-trip voucher to anywhere in the country.
To anyone willing to give up their seat and wait 5 hours for the next outbound flight.
And out of 300 people sitting in that gate area, what usually happens?
Usually nothing. Maybe one college student slowly raises their hand.
But the vast majority of the business travelers and vacationers just stare at their phones.
This is a perfect laboratory for observing the hidden cost of time and uncertainty. The airline is offering hundreds of dollars in free value.
But for 298 people in that room, the cognitive math returns a negative result.
Because the hidden cost of sitting in an uncomfortable terminal for 5 hours, the anxiety of potentially missing a connecting flight.
The loss of an afternoon on the beach, or the anger of a client if they miss a meeting.
All of those invisible costs far outweigh the cash value of the free ticket.
The brain computes the opportunity cost and ambiguity aversion and decides that paying the original fare to leave on time is actually the cheapest option.
So the actionable framework for the listener here is essentially an audit of friction.
You need to forensically examine the cheap or free alternatives in your specific industry.
Exactly. What is the friction the customer experiences when they choose the budget option?
Is it a longer wait time? Is it an unpolished, confusing user interface?
Or is it the risk of the project failing and making the middle manager look bad to their boss?
Once you isolate that exact point of pain, you stop selling your product's features and you start marketing directly against that specific pain point.
You actively build a world that repels the price shoppers who don't care about the friction.
And you create a beacon for the premium buyers who will pay anything to avoid it.
But to execute that strategy effectively requires the business owner to undergo a fundamental shift in how they view their own offering.
Because you cannot charge a premium to eliminate friction if you fundamentally believe that what you are selling is just a basic, interchangeable commodity.
Kennedy and Mars dedicate a significant portion of this text to dismantling what they call commodity thinking.
This was the part of the source material that required the biggest mental leap for me.
Really? How so?
They make the audacious claim that there's literally no such thing as a commodity in the consumer market.
They do. They argue that a commodity only exists as a mental construct.
Like a self-imposed psychological prison built by the business owner.
They insist that any physical item, regardless of how ubiquitous, basic, or abundant it is, can be completely decommoditized.
Differentiated and sold at a massive premium.
And to prove the extremity of this point, they look at the most abundant, essential element required for human survival.
Oxygen. Air is the ultimate commodity.
It makes up roughly 20% of the Earth's atmosphere. You are breathing it right now without paying a subscription fee.
Exactly. If there is anything on the planet that cannot be monetized because the free alternative is ubiquitous and infinite, it's air.
Yet the authors point out that entire industries have figured out how to package and sell it at a premium.
They highlight the trend of oxygen bars.
Where perfectly healthy people walk into a lounge, sit down, and pay $60 an hour to breathe pure, scented oxygen through a nasal cannula.
They aren't paying for the gas itself. They are paying for the wellness aesthetic.
The novelty of the experience and the perceived health benefits. And it goes beyond physical locations, too.
Right. The text references a company operating at GoToAir.com that sells personal oxygen devices, or PODs.
They sell a small canister of air for $19.99.
And the authors break down the math on this, which is just staggering. A user gets roughly 40 breaths out of one canister.
Based on an average human resting breathing rate, that means the consumer is paying approximately $7.40 per minute just to breathe.
$7.40 a minute to perform an autonomous bodily function that they were already doing for free.
It completely shatters the idea that price is logically tied to the cost of raw materials.
Because the physical product in that canister is virtually free to acquire, The price-product link is severed entirely.
The consumer isn't buying the oxygen molecules.
No, they are buying the feeling of vitality, the status of using a niche wellness product, or even just the placebo effect of heightened energy.
We can observe this same psychological decoupling in the apparel industry as well.
Oh, the underwear example.
Yes, the text uses the example of basic women's underwear. From a manufacturing standpoint, this is a highly commoditized textile product.
Just a specific amount of cotton, a specific amount of elastic, stitched together in a standard pattern.
A consumer can go to a big box retailer and purchase a 6-pack of basic Hanes underwear for roughly $1.33 per pair.
But that same consumer will gladly walk into a Victoria's Secret and pay $5, $10, or $15 for a single pair of underwear that utilizes roughly the exact same amount of raw material.
The authors also highlight an Australian brand called Wicked Weasel.
Right, which sells a single pair of basic everyday cotton underwear, which they brand as workwear, for $15.42.
That is a price increase of over 1,000% for a product that serves the exact same utilitarian function.
The physical commodity hasn't fundamentally changed, but the context and the meaning attached to the commodity have been completely transformed.
Let's dig into the mechanics of that transformation. Why does a rational human being pay 1,000% markup for cotton?
Yeah, is it purely deception? Because if I'm listening to this, my immediate skeptical reaction is, does this mean I could take a generic, low-quality widget, put it in a sleek black box with gold foil lettering, and suddenly charge a massive premium?
Isn't that just tricking the consumer?
Exactly.
It's a vital distinction. Slapping a shiny label on a substandard product is fraud.
And the market will eventually punish it through negative reputation and churn.
What Kennedy and Mars are describing is not deception.
It's totally the Starbucks effect. When you buy a $5 coffee, you know the roasted beans and hot water cost pennies.
You are paying for the third-place environment, the consistency, and frankly, the social signaling of walking into your morning meeting holding that specific green logo.
It communicates that you are a certain type of professional.
If you price your product purely by looking at what your competitors are charging, if you just look at the industry average and price yourself right in the middle,
You are essentially admitting to the market that you have no idea what your specific customers actually value.
you are letting the lowest common denominator of your industry dictate your worth.
Which perfectly transitions into the strategic danger of engaging in a price war.
If you operate under commodity thinking, your only perceived competitive advantage is to be slightly cheaper than the next guy.
But Kennedy and Mars warn that getting drawn into a race to the bottom, especially against massive, highly optimized competitors like Amazon or Walmart, is a fatal miscalculation.
They refer to this as the Jurassic Park trap.
This is one of the most vivid analogies in the entire text.
It's brilliant. In the original Jurassic Park film, there is that iconic scene where Jeff Goldblum's character, the chaotician Dr. Ian Malcolm, is sitting around the dinner table aggressively lecturing the billionaire who built the park.
He tells him, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
They figured out the genetic sequencing to clone dinosaurs, but they never stopped to consider the systemic consequences of introducing apex predators into a theme park.
And predictably, the dinosaurs escape and start eating the tourists.
The authors map this analogy directly onto the instinct to engage in a price war.
A smart, scrappy business owner might look at a giant discounter and say, I can compete with them.
I can switch to cheaper suppliers, I can cut my staff's benefits, I can reduce my marketing spend, and I can match their rock-bottom prices.
They focus entirely on the mechanics of whether they could cut costs enough to survive.
But they never stop to ask if they should.
Because what happens when you win that race to the bottom?
You have successfully engineered a business model with virtually zero margin for error.
You have sacrificed the quality of your product, which degrades your reputation.
You have eliminated your ability to provide high-touch customer service, which alienates loyal clients.
And you have attracted a customer base that only cares about the lowest price.
You clone the dinosaur, and now the bare-bones, hyper-fragile business model is going to eat you alive the moment there is a supply chain hiccup or an economic downturn.
The bottom of the pricing pyramid is just an incredibly brutal, crowded arena.
Massive discounters serve a legitimate economic function. They democratize access to basic goods for the mass market.
But their dominance at the bottom creates a vacuum at the top.
When a market becomes flooded with cheap, commoditized options, it creates a powerful counterreaction among premium buyers who suddenly feel underserved and alienated.
The text actually identifies this dynamic as the secret of the living.
No matter how aggressively a market is discounted, there will always, without exception, be a segment of the population willing to knowingly pay more for an elevated experience.
The story of the local model train store illustrates this dynamic perfectly.
It's a great case study. The text describes a small, independent hobby shop owner who sold model trains.
And one day, he finds out that Walmart is building a massive supercenter in his town.
His initial reaction is pure dread. He assumes Walmart is the grim reaper for local retail.
He assumes they will stock basic model train sets for half the price he charges, and his customers will abandon him instantly.
But the reality, 4 years after the Walmart opened, was the exact opposite.
The small hobby shop wasn't bankrupt. It was thriving and generating more revenue than ever before, directly because of the Walmart.
How does that happen? How does a giant corporation moving in actually benefit the local premium shop?
It's like driving on the highway and deciding to hang out in the blind spot of an 18-wheeler. If you try to match their speed and fight for their lane, you get crushed.
The hobby shop owner survived by refusing to fight in the blind spot.
He realized that Walmart was acting as a massive, hyper-efficient lead generation and filtration system for his own business.
Walmart brought enormous foot traffic to the area. A parent might wander into Walmart, see a cheap $20 plastic train set, and buy it for their child on a whim.
And that fulfills the demand for the casual, price-sensitive buyer.
The parent who just wants a cheap toy gets it, and the local hobby shop didn't have to waste time catering to a customer who was never going to spend real money anyway.
Precisely. But consider the other scenario. The parent buys the cheap train, they take it home, and the child falls completely in love with the hobby.
Suddenly, they don't just want a plastic circle. They want to build a historically accurate scale model diorama.
They want specialized tracks, miniature landscaping, high-end die-cast locomotives, and the technical expertise to wire a complex electrical layout.
Walmart cannot provide any of that.
The giant discounter created the initial spark of demand, but it is structurally incapable of servicing the deep, specialized needs of the premium hobbyist.
So Walmart acts as a filter. It scoops up all the low-margin, casual buyers.
And it funnels the highly motivated, dedicated enthusiast, the person who is now willing to spend $500 or $1,000 directly across town to the local specialized hobby shop.
The hobby shop owner embraced what the authors call radical individualism.
He didn't try to stock the same cheap starter kits as Walmart.
He went deep into niche expertise, community building, and highly specialized inventory.
He let the giant own the bottom of the pyramid, and he positioned himself firmly at the top, waiting to catch the premium buyers that the discounter inevitably alienated.
That reframing is incredibly empowering for a small business owner.
The giant competitor isn't a threat. It's a sorting mechanism.
But this requires us to confront a very deep-seated psychological hurdle.
Most of us assume that raising prices creates friction, that a high price is a deterrent to sales.
But key idea number 5 in our deep dive explores the exact opposite phenomenon.
Kennedy and Moores introduced the concept of a product being reassuringly expensive.
They argue that a high price isn't a bug in the marketing system. It is often the most powerful feature.
This taps into one of the most reliable cognitive heuristics the human brain utilizes.
A heuristic is just a mental shortcut the brain uses to make quick decisions when it lacks complete information.
Because the average consumer cannot forensically evaluate the true quality or efficacy of a complex service before buying it, their brain uses price as a proxy for quality.
The heuristic is simple. Expensive equals good, and cheap equals risky.
If I need to hire a defense attorney to keep me out of federal prison, or if I need a neurosurgeon to operate on my spine, I'm not looking for a Groupon.
If an attorney says, "I'll take your case for $500, your brain instantly translates that low price into incompetence, desperation, or a lack of experience.
I want the attorney who charges $1,000 an hour, because the high price tag actually reduces my anxiety.
It reassures you that you are hiring the absolute best.
The authors validate this psychology with a highly quantifiable example from Dan Kennedy's own career in direct response marketing.
He was consulting for a business-to-business newsletter and decided to run a split test on the pricing.
This is a controlled experiment where 2 identical sales letters are sent to similar audiences, with the only variable being the price.
He priced one version of the newsletter at $97 for an annual subscription and the other version at $127.
Now, any conventional marketer will tell you that crossing the three-digit threshold is dangerous territory.
The psychology of pricing usually dictates that staying under $100, like pricing at $99 instead of $100, significantly boosts conversion because it feels like a smaller category of spending.
Going from 2 digits to 3 digits should theoretically introduce massive friction and suppress the response rate.
Yet, the empirical data from the split test completely defied that conventional wisdom.
The sales letter offering the newsletter at the higher price of $127 pulled an 11% higher response rate than the $97 version.
More people bought it when it was more expensive.
And because it converted at a higher rate, at a significantly higher price point, the $127 version generated a massive 45% more total revenue for the business.
Let's dissect the cognitive mechanics of why that happens, particularly in a B2B context.
If a high-level executive receives a pitch for a business strategy newsletter priced at $97, their brain categorizes that expense.
$97 feels like a consumer subscription. It feels like a gym membership or a couple of streaming services.
The executive's brain subconsciously assumes if it's this cheap, it's probably entry-level recycled information that I already know.
The low price actively undermines the perceived authority of the content.
Exactly. But when that exact same executive sees a price tag of $127, it crosses a psychological threshold.
It no longer feels like a casual consumer purchase. It feels like a specialized corporate expense.
The higher price signals exclusivity. It whispers to the executive, this is premium, insider intelligence. This is the data your competitors don't have access to.
The $127 price tag isn't a barrier. It is the core feature that validates the newsletter's worth.
By pricing it at a premium, Kennedy reassured the buyer that they were making a serious investment in high-level knowledge.
This dynamic leads to a very stark practical imperative for anyone listening to this deep dive.
You have to audit your current market positioning. Are you attempting to occupy what is often called the muddy middle?
Because strategically, the middle is the most dangerous, highly vulnerable place a business can exist.
To bring back the highway analogy, the muddy middle is hanging out in the blind spot of the 18-wheeler. You are trapped.
If you're in the middle, you don't have the ruthless efficiency, the supply chain dominance, or the massive customer volume of the giant discounters.
You can't win on scale. But simultaneously, because your prices are average, you don't command the high profit margins, the brand prestige, or the fierce customer loyalty of the premium boutique operators.
You become entirely forgettable. You are a generic commodity, offering no distinct value proposition other than not being the most expensive and not being the absolute cheapest.
And in a marketplace where consumers are increasingly polarizing, either demanding extreme budget options or extreme premium experiences, the businesses operating in the muddy middle are the first to be replaced.
So, synthesizing everything we have unpacked today from Kennedy and Mars.
The absolute soul of this deep dive is the realization that price is largely an illusion.
It is not an objective mathematical reality. It is a fluid construct based almost entirely on human context and psychology.
Whether we are analyzing the massive hidden non-financial costs of a free government therapy program, the psychological signaling that allows a company to sell a $20 can of literal air, or the counterintuitive reality of a business newsletter that generates more sales at $127 than it does at $97.
The underlying mechanism is identical. Price is rarely about the raw materials, the manufacturing costs, or the physical object itself.
It is entirely about understanding and manipulating human psychology.
If you try to compete on the raw math of the physical commodity, if you sit down and try to calculate the cost of a yard of cotton, or the exact overhead of an hour of your time and try to undercut the guy next door, you will eventually lose.
There will always be a competitor who is willing to suffer more, cut more corners, and do it cheaper.
But if you elevate your strategy and compete on the psychology of the buyer,
if you deeply understand their desire for status, their need to save time, their aversion to bureaucratic friction, and their craving for a reassuringly premium experience,
you change the rules of the game. You render the cheap competitors, and even the ones giving their product away for absolute free, completely irrelevant to your target audience.
Knowing that you don't have to participate in the race to the bottom completely changes the trajectory of a business.
You don't have to panic when the free competitor moves in next door.
You just have to figure out what hidden tax they are forcing their customers to pay and market against it.
But accepting this reality leaves us with one massive, lingering question to ponder.
If you successfully break out of commodity thinking and you completely stop competing on price and raw materials, who or what is your actual competitor now?
Keep that question in the back of your mind as you evaluate your own industry this week.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.